Welcome to the After Dark podcast with Anthony James and Konrad. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode.
Hello, and welcome to the After Dark podcast. I'm Anthony, and that's Konrad.
Hello.
Well, Konrad, how are you this week?
I'm pretty good. I'm all darked out.
Yeah, well, you're dark. You've zero more dark to watch. How do you feel?
I feel like I'm at the end of a long journey, and I've said goodbye to an old friend.
Yeah, well, yes, many old friends.
Yeah,
you've said goodbye to. I like that.
Some not so good friends, to be honest. There's a few. Yeah. We'll get into it, but there's a few who I'm like, probably better off without them.
Yeah, catch you later. So yeah, guys, it's really, really exciting. Really exciting. Konrad has seen it all now. He's seen it all. Now, I know there are some people watching this who, for one reason or another, got caught up in their with their life, or just tuned out because they didn't like us anymore. And you are probably watching this thinking, I suppose I'll see what that guy Konrad thought of the last episode. Welcome back. We're glad to have you.
Yep. Tail between your legs, like coming back.
All right, hang on a minute. My Facebook is popping off here.
Nice. That's it. It's because you're a man of. I'm
logging out.
You're a social butterfly. You just flip between groups, and you can't be uncontactable.
Yeah, it's my brother. I don't know what he's talking about, but I'll catch him with him after. I'll touch him with him after. Right. Anyway, so this week we are talking about the last episode of Dark, and basically, I don't know what else to say. Because I feel like. Is the well of Dark going to be dry at the end of this episode? I don't think so, because as you know, I've got Dark discussions, so we are going to be there. Actually, I will say, this is a good plug to put in here, I think, is that tomorrow, when you listen to this, it will be tomorrow, on Tuesday, the 19th of January, Konrad and I are going to be live to the world,
and
we are going to be talking all about Dark, and all the unanswered questions, unanswered mysteries. That's one thing I'm really wondering about. Does Konrad have any unanswered stuff from this episode where he wants to know?
Yes. Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Like, there's going to be a few. Are you implying that you want me to save them for Tuesday?
No. You don't save them.
Right.
I mean, other people will ask us their ones, and we'll have to justify them. Everything I can justify everything. Let's be honest. I can't. Oh yeah, you can't. I know you can't.
Yeah,
I'm the one who goes into the nitty gritty detail. And if anyone was in the live stream last week, geez, there was some detail gone into there. I'll tell you that. There was many a paint document ruined with timelines circling back and forth. But nice. We'll not talk about that. But anyway, so that's tomorrow, 9 p.m. UK time, GMT. Join us. We are going to be live, and it'll be great fun to have you there. We had a good crowd in last week, and hopefully we can get the same next week, tomorrow. All right, so before we get into it, let me plug the Culture Cave YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to that if you haven't already. Every single week, we're still going with the After Dark podcast. If you don't know, we are going on to the OA next, so if you're only popping back in to see what Konrad thinks, we're going to do the OA not next week. Next week's the Theory Matrix episode, which you're all looking forward to, I'm sure. The week after that, we're starting the OA on the 1st of February. Then we are going to also ask you to subscribe to podcasting apps. If you haven't got the time, if you've went away from us, you haven't got the time to listen to us or watch us on YouTube, well, download us on podcasting apps and listen to us in the car or on the train. What else could I say here? Send us an email, adpodmail, if you want to. We are always open, eyes open, ears open, all that sort of thing there. Leave a comment. There's no more episodes, so
can't spoil anything now.
So
by the way, I'm going to go back and read. I'm not going to do this, but I might go back and read some of the comments from some of the other episodes where I got stuff right, just to see what people said.
Yeah. There's a lot of oh my god. Actually, before we get into it, Konrad, you wanted to have a wee chat with some of our listeners because Konrad. You didn't realize that Marta was already pregnant when the inflection point happened.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real about this. I've got a fucking bone to pick with our listeners. Oh, ye of little faith. All right. Obviously, I understand that Jonas and Marta have already had sex by the time the inflection point happens, and I was merely testing you, and those of you who noticed it pass. So well done to all of you. All right, leave me alone.
Yeah, I enjoyed the one comment that called us both small brain. Now, let me just say, why the hell am I getting dragged into this?
So, you had to get dragged into it because I wasn't reading the comments, so I wasn't aware this was happening until the other day when you announced that I was unceremoniously being dragged through the streets of YouTube.
Yeah, like it wasn't enough that you correctly guessed the parents of Ellie. It wasn't enough that you correctly guessed that there was 3 worlds and the whole ending.
Yeah,
it wasn't enough, Konrad.
A man's not a piece of fruit, all right? You can't just tear off the peel. No, what is it? Eat the orange and throw away the peel. It's been a long time since I've read Death of a Salesman, but that's how I feel right now, listeners. I feel like a withered husk of a man who's been drained of everything by you vampires.
Yeah, and let me just say, okay, go back and listen to the person who made that small brain comment. You've got into my small brain. Go back and listen to that podcast, right? Whenever Konrad says that she's not pregnant at that point, I go, oh, interesting. I've got something to talk to you about later. I forgot to talk to him about it, but there's proof, guys. I knew it. He's the fool, not me.
That's why Anthony was trying to cut out those last 10 minutes of the episode, which for those of you who weren't listening last week, just ignore the next 30 seconds or so. But where you cut out those final 10 minutes of last week's episode because you were trying to hide the truth.
Yeah.
But I got it, all right? I knew exactly what we were talking about, and you edited me to make me look like a fool.
Yeah,
it
took me more time to edit that together to make you look like a fool. I will say though, like, come on, Konrad's clearly the fool. He's clearly a small brain.
Yeah, I've got a tiny brain.
I knew she was pregnant at that point. I also will say, like, my predictions were far better than Konrad's too. Like, I thought, like, I'm pretty sure we can all agree that the Alex AT number plate on the car Noah was driving in season 1.
Fucking hell.
That is that theory is the keys to the kingdom as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. There's a lot of unanswered theories on my theory matrix coming out of this episode, as I'm sure there were yours when you did this. And I think we all just have to accept that certain things like the AT number plate theory are simply too obvious to be incorrect, despite them not explicitly confirming it.
Yeah. I think that's one of the ones you just sort of take as rote. That's what was going on.
Like I don't need to see Jonas drinking orange juice to know that he's probably drunk orange juice at some point in his life. And likewise, I don't even remember what your AT theory was, to be honest.
Alexander Tiedemann /
Oh, that's right.
Yasin was lending Noah the car because he was in on the whole Sigmunda stuff. And that is just obvious, it's just obvious.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so what about getting into it, Konrad? Do you want to get into the episode then?
Yeah, for the last time this season, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, let's break it down!
So the episode opens in the perfect way, in my opinion. We've just seen the cycle complete in the last episode, and now we see the first thing that we saw in the first episode.
Yep. Starts at the start.
I should probably say what it is. Yeah, Michael Kahnwald is committing suicide. I probably should say that.
Yeah, and there's a really beautiful, as there is in much of this show, to be honest, but in this episode in particular, there's a really beautiful kind of symmetry and poetry to the events it's presenting, and this is kind of the start of that, where we're seeing both the beginning and end of Jonas's journey here.
Yep. I thought it was a nice little touch. It also, my theory that we were going to get the last episode being just the first episode again.
You saw this, like,
almost. Okay, so then we go straight into, now I've dubbed in my review I did back in July, I dubbed Claudia in this episode Cluedo Claudia, because in my opinion it's like the end of a whodunit. Like, Claudia's just like, right, this is what's going on, and just like,
her entire, like, it's really smart how they do it actually, because like her entire conversation with Adam is essentially like a framing device for the first half of this episode, where she's talking to him over Michael killing himself, but then we shift that into an actual conversation in 2052 between Claudia and Adam. 2050, yeah, it would be 2053.
Come on.
I don't care about these dates, all right? Like they don't care. They like played Rick Astley.
You've seen the whole show, Konrad. You have to know everything now.
Yeah. Listen, I in all of my notes, I'm like, this is 2050 sometime. I don't know. I can't keep it straight. I'm here. I'm a big picture guy. All right. I'm here for the big picture. But so yeah, Claudia and Adam are having their conversation with, so it shifts from Michael from voiceover into actual conversation in the scene, and then it keeps doing that throughout the episode. So it pulls back out to voiceover as it's showing Eric Lux and other bits like that, and it really works as a kind of expository framing device for the first half of the episode.
It really works for the episode. It makes the episode very enjoyable. For me, as the host of this podcast, it makes my job a living hell. So I don't really know what we're going to do here because there's so much said. There's so much flashes to different things.
Yeah.
We'll try our best, is all I'll say. So we'll talk about, first of all, then, the reveal that there is indeed a third world. What were you thinking? Bitches. How do you think it works? Do you like it?
Points. That's what I was thinking.
Points for Konrad.
Points on the board. Admittedly, I only got it an episode before it was revealed, but I'm still quite pleased that I got there before the show gave it to me. Mm-hmm. In terms of how it works, I think that world doesn't exist anymore by the sounds of things. Like at the point that it is split, it's it either doesn't exist or it's not accessible apart from at that moment.
It's sort of explained that he destroys his own world. Now later on, obviously, they're able to travel to it, but they're able to travel to it before it was destroyed. So
yeah, like at the moment that it is being destroyed, they're able to travel to it basically. But yeah, I mean, it seems like it makes perfect sense to me. The as I said last week, the triquetra imagery is everywhere. This idea of things coming in threes is repeated frequently. Mm-hmm. I think even in like the kind of Yggdrasil Tabula Smaragdina imagery, there's this idea of like three worlds as well. So it really has been kind of lacing this theory throughout the show, and in a really smart way actually, because it's never pointed at it so explicitly as to be like, this is obviously where this is going. It's really only when, at least for me, it was really only when those kind of presentational elements came in the previous episode with like the different aspect ratio that I kind of clicked that was where the show was going to go.
Mm-hmm. Out of curiosity, I can't quite remember this at this point, but had you seen before? Well, we're not up there yet, but just out of curiosity, had you seen the yellow 80s room in the alt world before this episode?
I don't think so, because I made a note like, it's fun that they've changed the wallpaper.
Okay. The reason why I ask that is because I couldn't remember while watching the 7th episode whether or not the fact that the HG Townhouse we saw, Origin HG Townhouse we'll call them now. Oh my god, I can say everything now. It's amazing. So basically, Origin HG Townhouse was creating that machine in the bunker. Yeah. I was just wondering when I was watching that, should Konrad be picking up that the alt world has yellow and the prime world has blue at that point? So therefore, this must be a third world in 86 because it's different. I didn't know whether you knew about the yellow wallpaper yet.
It might have been shown very briefly. I don't remember us seeing 86 in the alt world in the bunker at this point.
Yeah,
so,
I'm not sure if we did. I don't think we did. In fact, I don't think we saw 86 at all in the alt world until this episode.
No, you might be right.
They stayed in 2019 the whole time.
Yeah, we saw people presumably going. I guess we haven't even really seen anyone traveling to 86 at any point in the alt world. So yeah, you're right. But I think with this, in terms of this like Claudia Adam discussion, I think it's nice to finally have someone explain to Adam that every step he takes, no matter how clever he thinks he is being, is predetermined. It's like, fucking stop, is what Claudia basically says to him, right? It's like I said a few episodes ago, like she's like the parent and Adam and Eva are all like the cats. Yeah. And she, parent and cats, that doesn't really make sense. Parent and babies, let's say. I've mixed my metaphors here. And she's like, just stop running around for 5 fucking minutes and let me fix this, all right? And then everything will be fine. And that's kind of what she's doing here. She's wrangling them all into a position to unfuck time, basically.
It actually works perfectly as a metaphor for what was happening in my house today. I was on the exercise bike and my son, child 1, kept running over and almost like losing his arm in the in the pedals. So I was trying to keep the cycle going, right? And he kept trying to do it. And I was like, could you just leave it for 5 minutes?
Like just no sense of self-preservation whatsoever. Like, this will probably shatter every bone in my arm.
Yeah,
but it'll be fun.
Yeah, exactly. So that I feel like Claudia in that instant actually.
Yeah,
but I actually really loved Like, I think some people who maybe didn't see the three worlds thing coming, and it didn't. I know for a fact some people think like some people sort of try and think that like, oh my god, the ending just came out of nowhere in this show, and I kind of feel like they think like, you know, the show turned stupid at the end because of that. But in my opinion, it just revealed those people for the fools they are. You know?
I mean, I think it gives you enough to figure it out. It's not like, you know, I'll be the first one to be critical of a show when it does stuff like The Basement and this, which again, it's not a massive flaw, but it's just a little bit like
Germany has basements. I'm telling you.
They need to write for the English, all right?
It's like if you're watching a New York show, right? And then like in 2 seasons in, all of a sudden there's a yellow taxi there, but you've never seen one before. You have to admit, they are in New York.
Yeah, that's true. That is a fair point. It's purely my cultural ignorance that's led me to this point. But you know,
but don't worry, Konrad. We'll talk about that before. But see, from now on, I'm sure you'll just forget that we've had this conversation now, and you'll still come back to the bunker thing. I'm
gonna keep mentioning it. I'm gonna keep mentioning it.
That's part of the fun.
Listen, I'm a commenter on movies and television shows on the internet. I have no time in my life for concessions or rational thought. All right, thank you very much. But you know, it doesn't really matter whether that's valid or not. The fact is, like, I'll be the first person to say that seems kind of dumb when I think the writing has cheated a little bit. But this is, I mean, it's subtlety. This is what this is. It's subtle writing. We should be commending them for lacing their entire show with this imagery and this idea without ever being so on the nose that you can see it coming. And it's exactly the same as, I don't know, like the Michael reveal, where they give you enough to really figure it out for yourself. One episode before the big reveal, so you can feel smart. But it's not just, it doesn't just come out of nowhere. And to be honest as well, like there's already 2 worlds. Like, they've already said, oh, there's an alternate world. Like, how limited does your imagination have to be like, well, obviously there's not a third.
Exactly. That's just ludicrous.
Let's not get crazy here, guys. Like, what are you talking about?
There's 2 worlds, at least 2 realities within those worlds. It's like, you know, that's just went off the rails.
A third one. Whoa. Settle down, young
Easy, Tiger. Easy.
What? It's not. That's not a valid criticism. I'm sorry.
Oh god, that's hilarious. Right. Okay. So we see the scene again.
I was just going to say, but like just before we go into it, that there was one thing I wanted to note was that, because she does say to Adam, you need to go back and basically stop the person in the third world. Gives them the plan basically. And I love the idea of using time travel to go back and prevent the inciting incident, which will lead to the invention of time travel from happening. Because that's some grade A time travel fuckery, right? right there.
It is, well, in my opinion, it is and it isn't, and we'll get into that later. I'm not gonna sort of front load this thing with all my thoughts on the show, because this is it is about us analyzing the show, but also about what you thought of it. So there is a discussion to be had there. That's all I'll say.
Okay, exciting.
And I think as well, like at the end of this episode, you'll understand why I think the dark discussions can go on for years, because literally there is a lot of people like me in the world who just love analyzing the minute details of the timelines and everything. But then you've also got all the character analysis stuff too, because it's so rich. Anyway, so Heiichi Tanahashi, it shows him again. Click on the 2 buttons. We get all the confirmation of your theory from last week. We also then they travel to Adam's Sigmundus lair, and he sees it for the first time being burnt down. He probably already knew it was, let's be fair. And she sort of lays out more of the plan. But it cuts away, and it explains that Eva... Basically, we finally get proper confirmation of what Adam and Eva's sort of motives were. Adam's motive was to destroy the world, destroy everything. We sort of already put that together. And Eva's motive is to keep everything going because she always wants her son to live. I don't know why you'd want Gary to live, but she does. So,
well, I mean, not to get ahead of ourselves again, because there's a little bit before this, but you know, he gives her a lovely hug. And that's all it takes to activate the maternal instinct in young Marta.
I will say there's a whole discussion to be had here about what's going on with the timelines of Marta and Gary, because unless I'm mistaken, that kid isn't 33 years old. So the differences in the time between the birth of the baby and then him being this age is not 33 years. So that's completely different to
Yeah.
the different ages of things we've seen before. So where the hell does Eva, this really young Marta who will turn into Eva, go to have the kid? And why is this 10-year-old going about the business? Anyway, I think there's a weird, discussion about that to be had.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I haven't really started unpacking that in my head, but I can definitely see that there's fodder for analysis there.
Yeah, there is definitely. Okay, so then we also get my personal opinion, and I'm sure obviously I don't want to front load you, but I personally loved the really sort of it was really quick and snappy, but it was very believable in the way that she went from hugging her kid to then taking the gun, killing Jonas. That showed us the other side of that. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I think her getting kind of forced down this path, I think it is very believable for her character, because she's kind of I think she's in like a state of emotional shock at this point. She's not really I don't think she's really necessarily processing what she's doing or what she's being asked to do, but she's being led along by herself, and that is manipulating her into doing these things. So when Stranger Marta brings in the clothes, like it's a goddamn ceremonial killing in a cult or something, it might as well be a robe that they're bringing her. It feels very much like she is being indoctrinated into this way of thinking. And yeah, I think it's totally believable that she ends up where she does end up, because she's being, much like Jonas has throughout this entire series, she's being sold this lie that the only way to fix things is to perform these terrible acts. And Marta at the point she is at the moment doesn't know that she's actually not fixing things. She's setting them in motion. She's operating on good faith that her older selves are telling her the truth. It just so happens that they're not. And I think it works brilliantly. Talking about this,
well, they are. They're not telling her the truth.
Yeah, I mean,
but they're not lying.
No, they're varnishing the truth quite heavily.
They are right though. She does have to kill Jonas to keep it going. You know what I mean? To keep the thing going.
Yeah, I think her understanding is that what she's doing will make things better next time, as opposed to sort of perpetuating it for eternity.
You think make things better next time?
Yeah, I think that I don't think this Marta is on board with everything happening the same way over and over again necessarily. That's just my read of her as a character.
Not at this point. I would agree with you, but I think that Eva, I think she does.
Eva definitely does.
Yeah,
I think
Eva's on board with it. Just has to happen again so that my son can live. Yeah.
But I think at this point, Marta is doing these things because she believes she can fix stuff.
Yeah.
And Stranger Marta and Eva are telling her that that's going to be the case, which is, or at least allowing her to believe that will be the case.
Well, it's the same with young Jonas as well. Like he thinks that it'll all be better in the end.
I was just going to say, I really like talking about the kind of poetry and symmetry in this episode. I really love, there's a really wonderful piece of dialogue in the kind of talking about the framing device of Claudia and Adam having a conversation leading into these scenes. Claudia and Adam are talking again before we go to the Eric Lux 2052 or 2053, I guess this would be for them probably, HQ. And Claudia talks about it, and it's a sentiment we've heard before, but it just really resonated with me this time. This idea of you create yourself forever anew, because it's this really wonderful piece of dialogue which kind of shows the cynicism that the show has for a sort of fundamentally human inability to change oneself or move away from your own nature. So we've seen that borne out in characters like Ulrich and Hannah, who can't change how they are, and their flaws will always lead to their undoing. But it also works quite literally in the case of what Marta is doing in this scene, where she is perpetuating this loop in her family.
Yeah, I think that's... Yeah, there's so much symbolism and mirroring between the two worlds. Like, this Marta is in my opinion, very much is that world's Jonas. And obviously at the end of the show, which we'll get into as well, there's very, sort of almost fatalistic sort of path to these characters have been on for a very long time.
Definitely.
With each other. Okay, so what... I don't know how to approach this, so I'll maybe be a bit... I'll be a bit facetious, maybe, but
be coy.
I'll be coy with you. I'll first of all ask you this question: what's your understanding about the parentage of Regina?
Okay, yeah, this is one of the things that I was going to ask. Mm-hmm. So, My understanding of the dialogue here, well, it's split actually. I'm not really decided either way, but the dialogue here seems to be implying that technically Regina is Claudia and Tronta's daughter in the cancer worlds, as she kind of calls them here, the offshoot worlds from the origin world, but that her place in the origin world is as the child of another man. And Tronta has come to accept and realize this. So he's obviously been with this Claudia for a long time. He knows what she plans to do and what the stakes are. So that was my first read. But then Claudia's response after this to me kind of says that he was just never the father, and I'm not sure which of those sounds more plausible to me.
Okay, so there is an answer to this, and
Okay.
you're actually given solid proof later on in the episode, which we can talk about now. I think about this small part. Basically, the way that Claudia was able to arrive at there being a third world, or the way I view it is, and I wasn't joking last week when I said, like, obviously I wasn't going to give it away, but when I said that the whole thing is like Biff's Casino and Back to the Future 2, it's this weird world that's happened because of someone trying to change the past. So H.G. Tannhaus in the origin world tried to change the past, tried to save his family, and this created this weird Biff's Casino world, right?
Yeah.
So in my opinion, and I've said before in a video, I like the idea of Jorn Fries and Baron Bodo being like, what if we made Back to the Future 2, but instead of focusing on Marty, who's trying to fix things, who's the weirdo in this weird world, we focus on all the characters in that alternate timeline that was created, and they come to realize that they're in an alternate timeline, right?
Yeah, I think that's there probably is some truth to that. I think.
Yeah. So basically, my idea, basically, the way Claudia was able to figure out this happened because Claudia's the only person who knew that Tronta wasn't the father. Even Tronta thought he was the father. So and they also threw in a red herring because on Eva's floor, and we went through it in our episode 32, it says Tronta's the father, but he's not. That's what Eva thought. He's not the father. Tronta is actually not the father. The father is revealed at the end, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the way Claudia was able to realize that there must have been something that made this big time travel incestuous knot happen is because, well, we all aren't involved in this knot. Regina isn't involved in this knot. Whereas if Tronta was the father, she would be. Like, she would be a product.
Oh, because she'd be a product of a Nielsen.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of a Nielsen.
Exactly. So
Okay.
So basically we are at the very end, which we'll talk about in more detail later, but it's pertinent here, so I will mention it here. At the very end, when we go into the origin world and we have like the scene around the table, when it first goes into the house, it focuses on a picture of Regina,
with Burnt
Claudia, and Burnt. Burnt is the father. Burnt is the
Oh,
father.
okay. I took that as Burnt being a replacement for Egon, and I was like, what the fuck happened to Egon in this world?
Burnt's the father.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Burnt's the father, which puts the scene between middle-aged Burnt and young Claudia in a very creepy light from earlier in this season.
He's okay.
But
I guess
I would
the
also
heart wants what the heart wants, but
but I would also say that there's been heavy foreshadowing for this. They kept going on. If you go back and rewatch it, which I don't know if you will, maybe you will one day. They kept going on about how it's really interesting. Like Tronta was talking about how progressive it was that Claudia was the first head of the power plant, first female head.
When you're saying it was nepotism that got her there, basically.
I think obviously, or maybe nepotism, but also maybe that Burnt knew her so well that he knew he could trust her, right?
Yeah.
But there was definitely a relationship there. There's also, this is quite a contentious theory amongst the fandom, but there is also a thought that I've had before that the reason why Regina owns the old Doppler mansion and it is now her hotel is because when Burnt died, she got it in the will.
Yeah, that would make more sense, actually. I had to cross that one off in the theory matrix as a red because I had it down that she will take it and turn it into a hotel because she'll, I don't know, have some financial leverage over him or something like that. That is interesting. I read that. Maybe this is me interpreting the age difference between them as gross and not realistic, but that picture at the end, which I'm sure we'll come back to when we get to the end of the episode, I was like, oh, okay, so Egon isn't her dad in this world.
No,
because Burnt is clearly old enough to be her dad.
The whole way she found out there was an origin world is because of the genetics of her daughter. It doesn't
Okay,
make
that
sense
makes
that
sense.
you cannot change DNA. But also I will say, like we've talked about it before in this show, you know, like if a TV show sets you up and then shows you something, it is what it is. So the fact that they mention in this here and the way Claudia responds saying, I actually wish you were the father, right? That's what she says, something along those lines. It sets up that Tronte isn't the father. And then later on they show us Claudia Burnt being very happy with Regina.
Yeah.
It's telling us that he's the father. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And I think that also answers one of the questions I had later in the episode, which is that how did Claudia figure this out this time when she hasn't figured it out every other time it's happened, I guess.
She has figured it out every other time. That's
okay. We'll come back to that.
It only happens once.
Okay. Well,
this is another contentious point amongst the fandom.
right.
We'll
come back to that when we get to. Hold on. Where's my? I'm trying to remember where my question was to myself about like I basically have a list of things that I wanted to talk to you about. That I made.
Yeah, I want to hear all before I and even I might leave it to dark discussions for most of my sort of brigading of your theories and your understanding. I might leave mine till a later date, but there's definitely aspects which I know you're going to say and how your analysis came across that mine has changed, but I know when I first watched it I probably thought the exact same thing as what you're going to say. But we'll see. I'm really interested to see as we go.
I think just before we move off this scene, just to note an aspect of this scene that it kind of comes at the end of, you know, that pretty big revelation that Tronte isn't actually Regina's father, and that is that, you know, Claudia is sending him off to kill Regina, which is something that I theorized back when it happened. And that's pretty heartbreaking to be like. But I mean, again, this is that stark difference between Claudia and Adam and Eva, where, you know, she is getting people, she's having people killed, but she's doing it because ultimately she knows how to fix this and how to avoid that pain from ever happening. Whereas for Adam and Eva, the pain they inflict is a necessary and justifiable cost of the ends that they wish to achieve.
Yeah, well, that's definitely true for Eva. Eva knows like the pain is going to be caused. I think Adam wants to end all pain, but with that, it also comes ending all happiness too.
Yeah.
Whereas there's definitely drawbacks in both plans. Okay, so we then also get, I don't know, we didn't really need this confirmation, but they gave us like her with alternate Claudia's clothes, showing us her getting dressed. We didn't really need that confirmation, but we got it.
She kept the coat in really good nick, which I appreciate. I'm always a fan of a nice coat.
Yeah, it's a lovely coat, cashmere, I think it is. Okay, so then we get the scene with the split screens between the two Ulrichs.
Yeah,
and the reason why this was important in this regard is because Claudia was explaining to Adam that in both worlds, everything happens every time. Now, obviously, I think she does mention as well. Now, things can happen slightly differently in the worlds, but they do happen. You know. Yeah. So obviously, we know that instead of going to the 50s, he goes to the 80s in the old world. Yeah. But it does happen differently in the two worlds. But it does happen, which is the important part.
Yeah, I think I kind of came round on this old Ulrich storyline a bit in this episode. I think because we before we get to the second half, there's a lot of expository dialogue, and this is essentially an exposition dump that Claudia is giving us here to say, you know, this is how this all works. But these scenes are, even though we've seen them before, we've seen half of them before, I guess. They're well paced and they're quite exciting to watch. And they are well positioned in this episode to keep us engaged while this expository dump is happening, and they wouldn't work with at least some of the alt Ulrich storyline established prior to this. So I was watching this like, okay, fair enough. I didn't love those. I didn't love the work on that storyline that was going on in this season, but the ends have kind of justified the means a bit here.
Yep.
A lot of head bludgeoning in a lot of head bludgeoning in this episode, and in fact in this show in general. I think being beaten across the head is the number one cause of death in Dark.
Yeah, I would say so. And like obviously they didn't do it this time, but a lot of the time they do mirror the same shot of them like on top of them hitting with a block. I will say it's funny. I was watching this episode the other day. Now most of Dark, I can watch while my toddler is playing in the room. This particular part I cannot.
Nope.
So I was literally having to turn the sound off and like just hold his head and say, "How are you, buddy? How are you?" Right? Just not let him look at the screen. So I was doing that, right, and it all finished. But then I was like, it finished, right? He didn't see any blood, but he must have seen him holding the bar before it happened. So I like had him, right? And he must have seen him hold the bar, because I just keep watching the episode then whenever there's all the gore's gone, and he just like slaps the table and goes, bang! I was like, oh
Nice.
No.
Nice. He's damaged for life now. That kid's going to grow up to be really into like giallo like I am.
Yeah. He's gonna think it's a dumb thing that, like, sometimes when Daddy's watching TV, he just holds my head very close to his.
Yeah, and covers my eyes and says, I'm sorry. Yeah. I have a question for you about this scene. 2 questions, in fact. Okay.
Yep.
First off, Ulrich seems like he's just dead in the 80s.
Yeah, that's my read of it. I think instead of going to prison,
He just dies.
I think he dies. Yeah, and that's funny actually, because does that confirm a theory of yours from the first season?
Or that Ulrich doesn't live to be like 140 or whatever.
No, do you remember you had a theory that he was going to die because...
Oh, yeah. Ulrich, yeah.
So you were right, but it was actually in the alt world it happened.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's outside the spirit of that prediction, to be honest.
Yep.
Simple-minded season 1 Conrad didn't know the alt world existed. That babe in the woods.
But Claudia's there too. Like, she pops up and
that is true, yeah.
She's watching everything. It sort of shows how she went about figuring everything out. She was watching everything.
Yeah. Oh, well, and that kind of leads me on to my second question, which is, what do you think happens to Alt Helga then? Does he just grow old and die?
Yeah, I don't think Alt Helga,
because he won't go back and crash into himself. And
yeah, he probably does grow old and die, or maybe he just lives in that time now. Like maybe, or unless Claudia takes him back to 2019, maybe he just lives in the cabin.
Yeah, sure. I mean, he's been there his whole life, basically.
I honestly don't know. But also, is it confirmed that this middle-aged Helga did help Noah in the same way as the other world? I
guess not.
I think with the pennies, maybe it is confirmed with the pennies.
I mean, the bunker's full of like children. It's covered in children's wallpaper.
Hang on. Helga he actually admitted to it too, didn't he? He actually went to the police station and said, "I did it." So
he's definitely helping him. But I mean, I think rather than the car crash being the moment where middle-aged Helga is no longer able to or chooses not to help Sigmundus, so my interpretation of this scene is that this is the moment where he becomes incapable, unless he has some real bad luck and he's sort of out of hospital in a month's time, and then Helga runs into him with a car. It's like you should maybe stop traveling for a little while.
Yeah, maybe this is the point. And actually, maybe Noah actually did. You know how they always get him early, right? Yeah. Maybe Helga was actually indoctrinated into the Eret Lux without the need to have Ulrich beat him. Maybe they just went and took him. So
yeah,
potential.
Yeah, it could be.
Okay, then we have another scene with Claudia and Adam. Now there's a particular moment, and I went back and forth on this in terms of highlighting this to you before hearing your whole theory of the show, but I think I will, because it might
about the radio broadcast.
No.
Okay.
I'm talking about there's one line in particular that Claudia says to Adam, where she describes the idea of the apocalypse causes time to stand still for a moment, and that's why you're able to split into the various timelines, have the inflection.
In this scene, you mean?
In this scene, she explains that time stands still. But then she also says, I also took advantage of that loophole to be talking to you here and now.
Yeah.
So basically, Claudia split herself. So, right?
Yes.
So what do you take from that?
Well, I mean, we've seen one of them that went off and got shot. And presumably the other one was still doing stuff with Middle Claudia, I guess. I
don't know if it's fully confirmed. But I personally think that this Claudia also went off and got shot.
Yeah, actually, having said that, the last conversation that she has with herself, I'm fairly sure she's going off to die at that point.
Yeah, because she did say to her younger self said, "Tell Dad I'm sorry."
Yeah. So she's going to the 50s.
Yeah. So there's a few things in this, right? So the first thing is she said she split herself. That makes me realize, right, that okay, so there's a couple of things here. She split herself, meaning that she anyway is now in a different reality to. There's two Claudias basically. Now, do we really have to care what the other one did? No, but she did split herself for a reason. Okay, so
Yeah.
my thoughts are, and maybe we'll get into it a bit later when Adam goes to see Eva, because there's some stuff we can do there. But my thoughts on it is that when she splits herself and she goes to talk to Adam, in the normal reality, before, like, in the other one, she didn't go talk to Adam because she said, I split myself to actually come and speak to you here today, right?
Yeah.
So my thought is that in the other one, she doesn't go see Adam, and then Adam goes to Eva and kills Eva. That's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, I think that's right, because I can't imagine Claudia was at all involved in anything that Adam does in this episode previously.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, you say previously. This is what I'm saying to you.
Yeah.
So basically, my understanding of it is because she splits herself, the cycle still exists, okay? But it's in the other reality that she split herself from.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that would make sense, because as like we've been told, as long as it kind of perpetuates in one of the one of the branches, it will both will continue.
So therefore, it's both true that Claudia figured out how to fix everything, and true that the cycle wasn't broken.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
There you go, physics. Fun with science.
Yeah, no, it's good fun. I love the I love the idea that everyone's talking about how Claudia broke the cycle, but the funny thing is she couldn't break the cycle, because if she did, nothing would have happened. You had to perpetuate the cycle in order to get to the point she can split.
That makes sense.
She can.
That is
split
really
herself.
smart.
Yeah.
So I mean, to be honest, in this scene, I was mainly just congratulating the writing on the callback to the time standing still for a second, which was mentioned on the radio broadcast in 2020 when we first see Claudia in a police station.
Yeah.
And it was like, that's cool that you put that in there. And then it's like, and it seems like, just a little throwaway
it's
science
literal
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, okay, this is science bullshit. I don't care about this. Like, get to people bashing each other's heads in Police Dark, and then they call back to it. I was like, oh, you geniuses! You put it right there in front of our eyes, and we just didn't know to look at it.
There's actually so much foreshadowing, and that's something we could do in a Dark Discussions episode in the future. But the foreshadowing to this in the third season, the fact that they're all going to disappear, is so laced throughout the season. Like, for rewatching it, like in the first episode of the season when they're in the kitchen of the Karnvold / Nielsen house.
Yeah.
And like Mikkel and Marta having a bit of a back and forward, and Mikkel says, what do you think? You think we like? Do we even exist or something like that? Like there's foreshadowing put into the dialogue even from there, So it's really, really interesting. But that conclusion of me saying about the cycle still exists in one of the timelines because she split herself to go and do this separately.
Yeah.
It took me 4 or 5 months to get to that. And it took me a lot of people telling me I'm wrong in comments. It took me a lot of a lot of rewatching. But that was one of my on my Dark Discussions last week. It was called 5 Dark Theories. It was called 5 Dark Theories You'll Never Convince Me Are Wrong, right? That was one of them. That the cycle is continued in one of the timelines.
It sounds totally plausible. I mean, to be honest, that's the kind of thing that I would just never get, because I'm not as good at going into those kind of like the minutiae and the crazy theories as well, not crazy, but like the grand theories as you are. I can just analyze what they put in front of me, and the rest, like, so basically when Claudia said that, I was like, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why people like listen to this podcast, actually, is because we are sort of two sides of the coin. I am very much detail focused in terms of like the time travel and stuff.
I'm just an idiot who talks about photography and stuff. It's just like,
that's not true.
These trees look nice. No, but I mean, I agree with you though. Like, I think your analysis on this is like has led me to some very interesting conclusions that I wouldn't have otherwise drawn. Sometimes putting your own feet in the fire, as we've learned.
Exactly. Right. Okay. So Adam then goes, and this Jonas, in the moments after Marta gets shot, right?
Yeah.
Goes and splits him off again. This is his third direction now.
There was a just before you speak, there was actually, first off, second time in the series that they've done black screen, pause for a second, and it's like a very much a done with the exposition, here we go moment, which is very cool.
And then the rest of this episode, up until like when they successfully do their thing, it's like running downhill.
Yeah, you're just off to the races.
It's like a snowball,
Yeah, it's like tour de force at the end of this episode. But yeah, talking about this scene with Adam and Jonas, like there was a definite moment when he went to go and get Jonas where I was like, for fuck's sake, Jonas, why must you choose now to be skeptical and stop trusting people? Like just once, like trust this one of all the people that you're going to trust Adam here.
Well, let me just say, I was thinking the complete opposite of that.
Yeah.
I was thinking, this man has just shot Marta.
Yeah.
Walked out the door, put a coat on, come back in,
and
just
popped
been
his collar,
and been like, listen, I know that just happened.
Let's forget about let bygones be bygones.
Yeah, let's put it in the past. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, he has absolutely no reason to trust him. But I was like shouting at my television, like, for fuck's sake, Jonas, please, like, just trust him. I know you have no reason to, but you trust everyone in this show. Like, it's your biggest flaw as a character is that you trust people you shouldn't trust.
Yeah, I just love the image of in Jonas's mind. Adam walked out the door, put a coat on, and came back in.
Yeah, just like put his massive collar up and was like, it's me. I'm a different Adam now. Come with me if you want to live.
Come with me if you want to die. All right, so they get into the alt world. They look at they watch. This really feels Back to the Future-y. They haven't done this that much, if I'm going to be honest with you. They kind of did it when Hannah went to see Mikkel in the 80s, but this idea of like sort of watching something that we've already seen happen. It's real like a sort of Back to the Future, Marty McFly goes back to the 50s, sort of thing. Watching Ulrich running into the cave. I really I love that,
Yeah, I think it's
because they were always there,
Yeah.
Because the way time works, they were always there, and I just love that idea that even in Back to the Future, like Marty was there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Really cool.
I think the thing that I was quite interested in this exchange between Adam and Jonas is the dialogue where Adam is basically relaying Claudia's plan to his younger self. And it's this idea that he and Marta need to work together to fix things. And I feel like the fact that even someone as fundamentally broken as Adam can agree with and support this conclusion is, and I'm going to talk about this a lot in this episode because I feel like it's the idea of what is happening here as it speaks to humanity is a theme that runs throughout this episode and in fact this whole show, but it's really brought to the foreground here. And this idea, like there are times when it feels quite cynical. Claudia talking earlier about how we just make ourselves anew, we can't ever change. But then it will also present this alternative side where Adam is saying like, okay, I need to change, I need to offer something different here, and it is this glimmer of hope for humanity to say if we kind of work together and sort of work for something larger than ourselves, we can actually achieve something and change things. Maybe that's me reading too much into it, but that's kind of the theme that I'm getting from this dialogue. And also very exciting, we get Francisca mentioned for the first time. which takes me back to what you said when that was quote unquote spoiled for me, it was just mentioned in like a throwaway line in season 3, and here we are last episode. It's like, it's Francisca. You've all figured it out by now.
He did mention it in episode 6 as well when he was listing.
Oh, did he? Oh, okay.
He was listing Magnus and Francisca, Celia and Agnes. Yeah,
you're right.
But basically, it's the same thing though. It's just like throwing it away. I will say that. We'll get into the idea of predeterminism and free will at the end, I'm sure. But the idea in this one is this Adam. I'm sure even though back in like the cycle timeline, whenever he really thought that by destroying the origin it was going to destroy everything, I think he felt that was going to happen. But there was also always a hint there that Adam, no matter what you do, it's not going to work. Whereas now that he's been split off into this different sort of reality, he sort of, the way he is, he's completely changed as a character. The tension is gone from him. In like the tension, I feel like the tension of wondering whether he's done it before is gone. And he's very much just like, we can do this now. Let's take this little football and run it into the end zone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he is accepting of that, of the possibility that things can change here. He's a lot less, you used this word previously in this recording, but he's a lot less fatalistic. I think with Adam and Stranger, as he gets older, you sometimes get the impression that he's doing things because he feels he has to do them because it's predetermined that he do them. Whereas here he is making a conscious choice to change things, which to me is very upbeat in terms of what it says about the themes that this episode is addressing.
Yeah, and in my opinion as well, it finally gives this actor who plays Adam a chance to be Jonas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
which was something he hasn't really had before.
No.
Okay, so then we get the scene between young Claudia and older Claudia. We've talked a bit about it already. Interestingly, now I don't think we will ever hammer this and nail this down, but I question whether or not this scene has Claudia just gone and picked up this other version of herself? Is this the moment she split? Do you know what I mean? I do question that. I don't think there's any way of saying yes or no, because we know she was visiting herself anyway. But the way that she's giving all the information to her, it really seems like here we've been she's giving her the information. She says if Jonas and Marta succeed, then everything will be fine. It seems like she's just told this Claudia, right? So you've done all this investigation on your own. I'm just going to fill in the rest of the gaps for you. Here you go.
Yeah,
this is everything. So she tells her a lot of stuff here.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think it serves that purpose, and it also serves the purpose of just giving us kind of a quiet moment of reflection between two of the best characters or best actresses playing the same character in the show here before the end of all things, basically. And I think it's interesting the people we get to say goodbye to in this episode. I feel like the show is kind of playing favorites, which is not a problem. I'm happy for them to play favorites because all the characters that we get a kind of long goodbye with are the best characters in the show for the most part. But I think this is them revealing that Claudia is one of their favorite characters as well, because you don't see many other characters get this kind of treatment.
Yep, and did you notice that Claudia was packing up the Tannhaus machine into her thing?
Yep, yeah, taking that off to the 50s to then, hold on, where does that end up? Let me think this through. Then Noah gets it, and then he takes it back to Sigmundus.
There's a YouTube video on this, Konrad, which is 25 minutes long. We're not doing this right now.
No, we're going to do it, all right? Listener, you stay right there, all right? We're going to figure out where this fucking machine goes, all right?
So
it ends up with Bartos in the cave, basically.
Where did Tannhaus buy the screws to make it? That's where we'll start, right?
Yeah.
But basically, this is really interesting because, just touching on it briefly, is that there was two machines at one point. There was the broken one. And there was the one that Hannah brought to the 1911 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So there was two about. So there is a whole video out there on the internet where you can watch the whole timeline of it. We're not going to go fully into it now, but if you want to know which one this is, go and watch that. Yeah.
Okay. I may well do that. I can actually watch videos on Dark now, which is exciting.
Yeah.
There's a whole branch of YouTube has just opened up to me.
Exactly, but we don't have to worry about the spoiler tags on these anymore as well. But obviously, when we get to the OA, we do. But and in fact, actually, that's very important because there's going to be a lot of Konrads going along with us too.
Yes, yeah.
All right, so we get one of the coolest moments, I think, where Jonas runs.
It's the running tackle.
Running and tackles Marta, and they teleport.
It's pretty rad. It's a little risky, I'm gonna say. I feel like he could have done this in a slightly more controlled manner, but it's pretty cool what he does. I'll give him that. And I was yelling I spent a lot of time yelling during this episode, to be honest, but I was yelling at Jonas during the screen because he stands there watching Magnus and Francisca talking to Bartos and Marta for what feels like about half an hour. And I was like, for fuck's sake, Jonas, take your time. Why don't you just go?
He has to do it at a particular time because it has to be in the time standing still moment. But also, what's interesting as well is I got a comment on a video one time on they were talking about their unanswered mysteries and stuff, right? And the amount of unanswered mysteries and different conversation points that are on the show is endless. And what this person was burning away in their mind, what they asked was, how did Jonas time it so perfectly that when he grabbed Marta, they teleported at that moment?
I mean, it's like an egg timer, isn't it?
Yeah. He knows how many clicks there are.
Yeah, you just 10 seconds. There you go. I can count to 10, and I'm not that smart. So, Jonas has done this plenty of times.
Yeah, exactly. But also, it is just because they wrote it that way.
Okay, so am I the only one who gets a bit anxious in this show, and they do it a lot, with the number of people we have teleporting or time traveling and then ending up in the middle of the road?
I'm not going to say I was anxious in general about that. However, we have talked about before when they go in the caves, it's to teleport with the machine. It's to avoid going into people.
I hadn't even thought about that. They could telefrag a car, and that wouldn't be good. Maybe that's how. What's his name? What's Tannhaus's son's name? I can't remember. It begins with an M.
Gustav.
No, it's not Gustav.
Heinrich.
No. It begins with an M.
Oh, Marek. Oh, you mean
Marek? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't know which Tannhaus you were talking about.
Yeah. I should have been more specific. Yeah. There's a few Tannhauses. Marek. Maybe that's how they had a car accident. Maybe they did try and fix it, but Jonas and Marta got the calibrations wrong.
We're in the car. Yeah.
Yeah, just like and there was just like half of Marta inside his baby.
I will talk about it later on, but just a one-word answer. Did you at all suspect that they were going to cause the accident?
There was a thought in my mind that they're going to appear and then they're going to fly off the road, and then there's going to be an action sequence where they have to get them out of the car before they drown. I'm glad they didn't do that.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, I'm pretty glad as well. The way that ended is just fantastic. But okay, so they travel into
lovely little moment here.
Yeah, they travel back into sort of the Prime world, and they're in 86 now. And Marta basically is just like, what the hell? You're still alive? But then this Jonas didn't know.
He has not a clue. He doesn't know what's going.
He's still a wee babby, this one. But basically, I don't know. Like, Marta seems to get on board with it pretty quick.
I mean, she definitely does. I think. So this entire stretch, this Jonas and Marta stretch that we're already kind of in the middle of here, but basically starting with him tackling her, is awesome. Because it's all just kind of. It's just moving forward at such a fast clip, but it's taking the time to have really cool moments between these two. So for me, actually, it was quite useful to have the "you look like her" line from Jonas, because it's easy to forget in like the kind of all the hullabaloo of everything that's going on. They're like, "Oh, this Jonas doesn't even know the old world exists." I have to say. Sometimes we're critical of Jonas for being too trusting or being a bit of an idiot. He is doing remarkably well for someone who's like, okay, your girlfriend got shot. We haven't got time for that. You need to come with me. Then we're going to a third world. What, you didn't know about the second world? Don't worry about it. We're going to the third world. Yeah. And
here's a new time travel device. You've never seen it before. Don't worry about the instruction manual. Just turn this knob.
It's just like an egg timer. Just crank it. You'll be ready to go. And he gets on board remarkably quickly. But this is a really cool moment between them to really hammer home that this is Jonas almost operating on instinct here. I think like he's flying on a wing and a prayer at the moment, and it's a way that Jonas, to be honest, has been operating for a lot of this series. But this time, there's kind of light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. And talking about Marta, I mean, there's cuts here between the Jonas and Alt Marta stuff and the Adam and Eva stuff, which is I don't know if do you want to do them do all the Jonas and Alt Marta stuff and then do the Adam and Eva stuff, or go back and forth between them?
Let's do the Alt Marta and Jonas stuff up until the point where the light appears, and then
so you get like the awesome dialogue between them. That they have had so many great conversations outside the mouth of the caves, but you get the glitch in the Matrix line coming back again. We're going to come back to that because I said something about how I thought there was something like the Matrix in the caves. You just watch this space, listener. All right, that's all I'm saying. But there's after Jonas lays out the plan to her, there's this awesome shot of Lisa Vicari. It's the front-on shot. Jonas has walked away from her into the caves, and she's kind of like her head is down, and it's just a moment for her to act and to show her character like wordlessly coming to terms with the fact that she is going to have to prevent herself from ever existing. And she raises her head, and there's this brilliant bit in the soundtrack where they just play this like bassy synth note, and it's like, okay, Martha's on board, and it's just this, and then she walks off, and it's this phenomenal moment.
Yeah, it's just great. What about whenever, this is actually talking about how innocent this Jonas is. There's a moment when they're sitting in the tunnel waiting for the light to come. And I will just say, first of all, he explains it to her again. This is something that they did brilliantly in this episode. We hear the explanation of what's happening 3 times.
Yeah.
Claudia explains it to Adam. Adam explains it to Jonas. Jonas explains it to Marta. And it's really just like, right, guys, the end of this show is going to be very emotional. You need to understand how we got here to fully be affected by it.
Absolutely.
And they get it into our head really well, in my opinion.
Yeah. And it doesn't, I think the crucial thing there as well is it doesn't feel like you're being hammered over the head with it. Like they're reinforcing it, but they're doing it through, I wouldn't necessarily call the writing of it subtle, but it's delivered in such a way that it doesn't stand out from what's going on in the scenes where it happens. So yeah, you're absolutely, you're internalizing the like what's going to happen, so you can just reflect on the kind of the emotional side of the climax.
Exactly. By the time we get there, everyone who's watched the show, I would say 99% of people who watch the show are on board with what's just happened makes sense. Now
Yeah.
let's just experience it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
when they're in the tunnel, it's a really cool moment as well, because talking about how innocent Jonas is, Jonas says to Marta, Jonas in your world, was he different? He doesn't even know that Jonas doesn't exist in her world.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like that. I think that's why I love Lewis Hoffman's performance in this, because I wonder if they filmed it first. They can't have filmed it first, because they were doing like a presumably doing an episode a week, or when it initially came out.
No. It came out all in one dump. So they
Oh, did it? Okay.
They make it like they make most shows that come out as a dump get made like a film. And what
Yeah,
I mean by that is they do location work. They
Yeah.
do all the stuff in the forest, all the stuff in the bunker, all that, you know.
But to roll yourself back, or well, not even just to roll yourself back, but to jump around with this character to so many different kind of emotional states and levels of involvement in this in the time travel stuff is so impressive. And not like you say here, he doesn't know anything. He is operating purely on faith and the fact that he knows he wants to fix it. He doesn't really know how, but he has been told by Adam, who has somehow spoken to him, like somehow got through the layer of cynicism that he rightfully has because he shot Marta. But it's such a great performance, because he's naive but not annoyingly so. He's still driving at the right thing even if he doesn't fully understand it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the Adam and Eva stuff then. So basically, Adam comes in, and what we learn from what Eva says is the way it ends for her usually is basically Adam's just like, he fails in his attempt to kill the Origin. He's just like, well, I'm just going to go fucking kill her. Right?
Like, all right, plan B, I'm going to shoot her. It's
Yeah.
all right. Nice job, Adam. Really inventive.
Yeah. What did you think about the little bait and switch, or the little tense moment where Eva's like trying to kill herself?
Yeah.
And then it's like, did a little bit, did you like, were you expecting him to have the bullets, or did you think, oh, time won't allow it?
I think I was expecting the gun to not be loaded at that point, because I think by this point Adam's character is so clearly on a redemptive arc in this episode that it would be really weird for him to like allow her to try and kill herself. So it's a great moment, a great scene between these two. And you know, we're seeing the beginning and end really. Well, it's not even the beginning and end. It's almost like an anthology at this point of the Jonas and Marta relationship. You know, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We see them at a very young age having this interaction with each other. We see them in the tunnels, you know, when they're teenagers, and we see them at the end of their lives here. And it keeps on coming back to this relationship between these two as something they are indelibly linked to each other. Even when they've spent probably the best part of 60 years actively fighting against each other as Adam and Eva have, they are still able to reconcile because they still love each other fundamentally. And yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to bookend a character or two characters' stories.
And they've finally been given permission, once Eva realizes that, you know, okay, this is actually going to end. They've done it. You know, she actually just gives in, and you know, and she no longer has to despise him, you know, or no longer has to go work against him, and she just like, you know, lets the feelings that she have flow. It's just it's really lovely.
And there's the you know, the you will die, I will die. This acceptance of the end coming is really beautiful, and his as the passage is opening, we get here the death is irreconcilable speech, which I believe we heard before in voiceover early in season 2. I couldn't exactly place where we'd heard it, but I'm almost certain we've heard Adam talking about that before. And yeah, then as he's talking, we see the Origin world again.
We do. So basically the one thing I wanted to mention about the Origin world, which we haven't mentioned yet, and you didn't pick up on it, and to be honest with you, I don't think I did back when I watched it either. But like, see the bunker, right?
Yeah.
So this is actually solid proof that it was a third world, and it's not just the way that they were shooting it. It's literally solid proof from the show. So the real hatch to the bunker in the Prime world, I wouldn't say that, not real. Sorry, real's the wrong word. But in the Prime world, it opens from the right hand side, and then the hinge is on the right hand side. In the Alt world, it's on the left hand side. And in the Origin world, it opens up.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't notice that. Yeah, that's fun to have little touches like that. I wonder if it's I wonder how they did that. Whether they had to reattach the door every single time they did.
Well, they wouldn't have had to for the alt world, because remember, they literally flipped the images.
Oh yeah, of course they did.
But for the origin world, they would have had to put a new hinge on. Yeah.
Just like, I hope they don't tell anyone about this World War II bunker, that they're like, listen, we're just gonna, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Just gonna move some screws.
Okay, so all right, so we'll get into it then. We'll get into the tunnel.
Yeah.
So
Tannhaus turns on the Time Fucker 3000, and
yeah,
here we are,
and we're in the Time Fucker 3000 tunnel.
Yeah.
What did you think about this depiction of sort of being between worlds? You know.
Okay. So the kind of matrixy looking thing that they're in, right? I'm gonna say this now. I said before we knew where the two passages led in season 1. So one of them go, in the passage. One goes off to 1986. The other one goes off to 1953.
Yeah.
And you, before we knew about the 53 one, you asked me where I thought the other one went, and I said that I think it go. Well, I said a couple of theories, but one of the theories I said was I reckon it's going to go to a room like the Architect in the Matrix, where there's just like, this is the hub of all things. And wouldn't you know it, 3 seasons later, here we go.
Yeah, I don't think it's a perfect analogy to what this is, but I think it's pretty good. Like, definitely, I in my opinion, like, I don't know, like, do you think that obviously there's only really the 3 worlds at play here, but I get the impression that if they were able to go to if there was a 4th world, that they could also get there. Like, this is between worlds. Like, this is
is it's a really cool presentation. Like, jokes aside, obviously it looks a bit like the Matrix, which is not a bad thing by any means. The Matrix is super cool. But yeah, this is it's almost like what it reminded me a bit of actually was the end of Interstellar.
I'm so glad you pointed. Yeah.
Like this kind of passage, but like you're not
through the black hole.
You're not in time anymore. You're
Spoilers
outside
for
time.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, spoilers for Interstellar. You don't need to see that movie.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. It's amazing.
It's okay. It's not bad.
No, it's really good.
We'll save it for the other podcast.
Yeah.
But so they're kind of outside of time here, and it's a really cool presentation of it, and I love that sort of this duality of duality is not the right word. This kind of like poetry of their relationship with each other. With Jonas revealing that at a very young age, Marta saw him as he is very close to the end of his life, and likewise for Marta with Jonas. It's so beautiful the way it's presented, and it's just reinforcing these idea that these two are always going to find each other. They're always going to be connected. And I think the reason it really struck me as much as it did is that when we come out the other side of this and we get into the real end game of this episode, I was crying quite a lot because it's really sad, you're losing these characters who are you've been with for a long time. But there is this glimmer of hope that and I feel like it almost ties into the kind of cesium 137 ghost stuff as well. The show has always, it's never really been explicit about it, but it's always kind of said there is something that isn't explained by science that can kind of reach across worlds and bond people. And I don't think they ever want to be
subtle. Yeah, it's very subtle, but it is.
But I don't feel like they're explicitly saying, oh, it's God or it's whatever. I don't think they're interested in making a conclusion, but there is this just this glimmer of something that is really beautiful, I think, in how it's realized at the end here.
Yeah, and so whenever they do see each other as younger children, you said they're sort of, it's almost like it was their fate to be intertwined in this way. And we've talked about it before in the idea that although Jonas from his world lost his Marta, but once he came and started being with this Marta, it's like, oh, this is the true Marta he's supposed to be with. Sorry, Bartos can have the other one, but but basically sloppy seconds for Bartos, unfortunately. But
he's proven he's game, to be honest.
He's got nice hair. But basically, this moment, right, sort of to explain it it's nothing to do with science, as you say, but my read of it is that when they're in this sort of in-between worlds place, they're able to reach out. And because in that moment, Jonas was calling for Marta, Marta was calling for Jonas, it reached across worlds and just latched on and got them in this state when they were children. Sort of when they were like, Jonas, and then she actually got to Jonas and communicated with him at that age.
Yeah.
That's sort of, it's very you can't really explain it because it's not meant to be explained, but it's that there's an intangible thing that's connecting them.
I love that they have it though. Like, sorry, you.
No. I was gonna say my idea, like, this is where I don't believe it's contentious, but it maybe will be, just because it always the way you read the end of the show is very personal to yourself, but this moment, and then whenever they get through and eventually they speak about this moment later, that was you. It does sort of show that this is predetermined. They saw each other when they were children. This, the whole idea of, like, if the past has already happened, so even if you go back, you can't change it. Which has been something that's been reiterated many times through the show. Like, whenever the Claudia breaks the cycle, we've already talked about, I don't believe she broke the cycle, but she split away to go and do this. You get the impression that everything's going off. They're flying off the seat of their pants. It is all free will. The ball's rolling down the hill. But this then throws a question in. And it's like, whoa, hang on. These characters were actually... It had to be this Jonas, and it had to be this Marta. And they were, destined to be here,
Yeah, and I think that's true. And I think it's really interesting that at this point in the show, more than any other, you have the sort of hard sci-fi that the show has kind of made its kind of meat and potatoes out of, kind of bumping up against a more nebulous spiritualism, really. And I don't mind that. I could see why people who are really into the raw sci-fi of it might get a little bit annoyed about this, because it's introducing something that isn't really quantifiable or explainable. But to me, I love a good, like, schmaltzy ending, and we got that, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but we got that here, and it was partially reinforced by this kind of nebulous bond between these two that was introduced here. And as you say, almost an idea of fate, that they are fated to always be in each other's lives.
Exactly. Like, so, like, the idea, like, I just think that moment, it's really cool, because if you think about it like that, it still fits the predeterminism sort of sciencey thing, but it also gives the characters such an emotional weight to that scene, where they're saying, "Oh my God, that was you as a child," and it's just great. So they're backing up, and they finally back into each other, and when they find each other, then sort of the third passage to the origin world is revealed. Jonas turns his little ball, so as they're walking into the origin world, he turns his ball, then travels back to 1971. I think if they just walk that way, they probably would have got to the origin world. But I think by using the ball, it explains why he's not coming out in 86. If you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, yeah.
Well, it also doesn't exist after 86 in the origin world, does it? At this stage. So then it cuts to Marek, Sonia, and the baby Charlotte.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was just, well, no,
I know what you're going to ask, and I'll just say no straight away. This is not the same Charlotte.
Come on, it might be. Let me have my Charlotte.
Yeah, the reason why it's not the Charlotte is because Marek and Sonia existed in the Alton Prime worlds too.
That's that is true. But I want to let me have. I'm having my Charlotte. I'm not because if we don't have Charlotte, if we don't have our Charlotte, then we don't have Ellie either, and that's the world needs Ellie. That world needs that fox hat.
But you do realize that can't exist because that's time travel? Come on, Konrad.
Right.
Don't be a small brain here.
Time will find a way, all right? If, like, other characters are going to figure out a way to exist, it'll figure itself out. That's my belief.
Come on, Konrad. Don't be a small brain here, as that one person says. Everyone who was involved in time travel whatsoever is not here anymore. In fact, that's confirmed, because you can go to the dark website and you can actually get the Origin World family tree.
Well, we'll get to that when we get to it, because I have questions about that, which links back to what we've just been talking about, actually, with this kind of intangible.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Okay, I'm looking forward to that.
The first thing I noted in this scene, though, is Marek Tannhaus is a strong frontrunner for best hair in the entire series.
Yeah, he's
great,
lovely.
Absolutely great hair, and he really has that kind of 70s Jim Morrison thing going on, which I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, no, he looks great. My idea, the baby being called Charlotte, right? There's a load of stuff from the Origin world which is echoed in the other two worlds. I think that's what that is. The whole thing is grown out of HG's life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's like the idea that in the Alton Prime world, he didn't actually go and create this world fucker because he had his own Charlotte. He had his adopted Charlotte. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the Charlotte one. There's one we'll talk about later, which I do actually think might be correct.
I know.
But
I know what you're talking about, and I'm already going to say no, I don't believe so. But yeah.
Wow. But the Charlotte one, I was just like, I'm in my head, I'm just going to assume that this is our Charlotte because that makes me happier. I'm not
100%. You can do that if you want. Like that's however.
I know it's
to.
probably not, but like,
Yeah,
that's how I reconcile this ending with the heartbreak.
But I will say to you, Konrad, before you let us know what you're thinking later, right? Just in case, because we are going to get a lot of comments about what you're thinking, and I know what you're thinking. We're going to get a lot of comments, Konrad, about that. Because I will just say, Sonia is not Elizabeth, and Marek is not Noah. That's not how DNA works.
Yeah, but I don't know. Life finds a way.
It's not how DNA works.
Listen, all I'm saying is if you put enough Mareks and enough Sonias in captivity, eventually you'll get a Noah. That's just like that's just science. That's just good. That's just good old-fashioned science.
That's just genetics. I think that's okay. Anyway, so they appear in the middle of the road. They skid out. In that moment, I'm honestly thinking when they skid out, I'm like, oh my god, they caused a crash.
You've done it again, Jonas.
Yeah. So they eventually, get him out of the car. What we don't know is an ocean. What we know is a drop. What we don't know is an ocean. He gets him. He Jonas, say what you want about him. He knows the exact line to say.
Yeah, he has a way of not saying anything for a long period of time to the point where you're like, say something, Jonas, and then he just nails it. He gets the right line. Then Marta comes in with the "your father loves you very much" just to reinforce it. It's like, all right, thanks for the help, Marta. I think Marek's recognition here implies that I think this is complete aside, but implies that he maybe is a bit more of a scientist than he lets on in that first scene, or at least he was paying more attention to what his dad says to him.
I think that's fair enough. Yeah, like like we all know, like the way he's rebelling against his father here. I think, like, obviously he's got some genuine demons, I'd imagine, but 100% he has listened more than he would let on to his dad.
And I will say, actually, for Marek and Sonia, given these characters have three scenes, actually, to be fair, but they have less than an episode for us to get to know them. They are brilliantly characterized. Like we don't spend very much time with them at all, but I already feel like I know a huge amount about them, including that Sonia is not a very good mother because she brings that baby straight out into the pouring rain.
Was she holding the baby in the car? Was that like?
Yeah, she was holding the baby in the car. Which I don't know. In the 70s, who knows? Yeah. Like they're probably drinking Budweiser while they were doing it as well, or I'm trying to remember the name of like a Pilsner or something, like some German beer. But yeah, like when she wasn't sure what was going on with Marek, she just brought the baby straight out into the rain. It was a bit like, just leave the baby there.
I will say, Konrad, the fact that you say they're very wonderfully characterized with so little time, there may be another reason for the fact that you feel like sort of that you know them better than you should.
Okay.
Let me tell you why.
Go on.
Sonia is an anagram of Jonas, and Marek is a name that has the same root meaning as Marta.
That's interesting. So they're kind of like almost meeting themselves, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that your?
It's kind of like. Well, I don't think they're themselves, but it's put in a way.
There are elements of their personalities, perhaps, that are projected into the Alton Prime worlds into these characters or something. That's fascinating.
Yeah, isn't that really cool? Also, it's interesting, worth noting as well. This Marta is actually pregnant right now, as well.
Yes.
Doesn't really mean anything, but it is.
No, I mean, symmetry like that doesn't happen by accident. The show has earned more than enough respect to interpret things like that as having some meaning, albeit maybe a small amount of meaning.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is a great scene. I love Marek's performance here is great. Jonas and Marta are great, and I just love this idea that, like, on such razor thin margins, our universe is saved.
Yeah.
And the sort of pullback, which we'll come back to later, to show Jonas and Marta just standing in at the junction with the traffic lights behind them and the trees in front of them. It's very, very deliberate. I mean, it's a shot we've seen a lot before, obviously, with the bus stop, but it's very deliberately mundane, and it kind of downplays the enormity of what has just happened. It's like no one will ever know, but you will know, and it's heartbreaking, but at the same time, there's a kind of beauty to it as well.
Yeah, and there's a few things to notice in that shot as well. The first thing before I say that is, though, you know how Marek sort of talks about, like, Sonya says he thinks he saw angels, right?
Yeah.
So like, that was a really cool little touch. There's actually been foreshadowing to that as well. Do you remember whenever Jonas was shot in episode 5 at the very end and he was lying dead on the floor?
The angel's wings.
Angel wings, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's the symmetry of it being brought in. It's so cool. Okay, and the other thing I noticed in this shot was if you look behind the trees, the power plant is not there in the origin world.
Oh, I didn't notice that actually. That's cool. That's well, yeah.
So therefore,
I guess,
Regina probably won't die of cancer in this world either.
yes, yeah. That's. I wonder what happened with. I wonder what Bernd was up to. Too busy having a nice wholesome relationship with Claudia, I guess, in this.
Exactly, he didn't have that thing of needing the power plant, so maybe that's why it was more of a wholesome relationship with Claudia. Interesting. Okay, so I know there's going to be a lot of people who, no matter what, think Bernd's a creep. I will say,
I mean, yeah,
he is a creep in the Prime world when we see him in season 3, but that doesn't mean that Origin Bernd is a creep. We haven't seen his life. You know what I mean? A lot of people will say the age difference is creepy enough.
Yeah,
and
it's troubling.
It's troubling. I'll admit. But we don't know that scene where he was like, you know, really going up and giving her money and all. We don't we don't know if there was the creepy undertones.
Yeah, maybe that was a lot less sinister in the Origin world.
Exactly. I just like, you know, it's like they actually didn't really know each other until they got into working in the power plant, and like just one night over looking at the figures, they were like, you know, they
hands brushed against each other on the ledger, and they're like, oh,
yeah,
and then
something
a torrid night of romance later, and Regina was in Claudia's tummy.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Marek comes back. He hugs his dad. Speaking about things not perfectly matching up with the way science would have you want it to, because of just the way that they're finishing the show in an emotional way. Technically, as soon as he stopped them crashing and they turned around, they should have just disappeared, right? There's also another thing I want to mention later on as well. They should have disappeared. They didn't disappear straight away because we want the emotional moment and the success. Like the
come on, we're watching a movie here, guys. Like, you know, not a movie, but a TV show. Like, let's have a little bit of schmaltz here. It doesn't have to be, you know, all cut and dried.
Exactly. So like, you know, time lets them have a minute to talk. And then they
times are romantic.
Yeah, they chat for a minute and then they start which we already talked about, and it's the Konrad, if you weren't crying already.
Oh, this got me. This got me
like the perfect match line.
Like before I was crying before that, to be honest. But the perfect match line, it was just like, come on, like this is there's so much in this scene that is great, to be honest. And it's obviously, you know, it's that feeling you have when you watch the end of a lot of TV shows where you feel like you've been on a journey with these characters. So there's an emotional release there anyway. But with these two characters, having seen them be through so much, to finally get this catharsis of the end of their journey, albeit a very sad one, because we don't know what the future. We're kind of fairly certain what the future has in store for them. But the kind of soft strings of the score, the like thunder fading into the background, that reveal, as we talked about previously, that they both saw each other as children, and these revelations coming as they're about to cease to exist, and then Marta saying, "Are we just a dream?" Which is really lovely imagery, because it's, you know, not just a dream in terms of their relationship and whether that could work, but in terms of their very existence is nothing more than a dream at this point. And then there's that, as you were saying, that acceptance from Jonas of, you know, we're a perfect match, never believe anything else, as they start to fade away. And like this is the kind of romantic schmaltz that I absolutely live for. Like that, I wanted to fucking high five someone when they said that, because it's like, you've done it again. Yeah. You've done it again. It was so good. And then it returns as we see them start fading away more. It returns to that wide shot of them in this very mundane, very quiet setting. It just reinforces this idea that the world will never know what they did, but we've seen it, and for that we can always cherish that. And then obviously, then we get the montage, which is,
let's have a montage.
Yeah,
I see trees are green.
That's a hell of a song choice. For the montage.
Same vocalist as the as the opening credit song too.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't put two and two together on that one.
This is the one I was talking about earlier in the season. That there's another song that they sing coming up. This is it.
Oh, okay, nice. Yeah, and it's a great cover. It's not overly sentimental, I feel, which is good because if they'd have done like the Louis Armstrong version or so, I mean, obviously they would never have done that, but it might have felt a little bit hackneyed, a little bit corny.
Yeah.
But this is quite underplayed. But still sentimental enough to really get me. And then you just get this roll of characters that we see disappearing. So Adam and Eva go hand in hand. Then the stranger fades. He's got the St. Christopher pendant in his hand, and I think the acting from Andreas Pietschmann is really interesting as he fades from existence, because his face to me portrays he's obviously scared about what's happening, but there also seems to be a kind of almost like exhilarated acceptance of like, oh, finally it's over, like, and whatever someone has fixed it. And I felt like less so for Stranger Martyr. To me, she seemed more.
Well, she wants her son to live. Like yeah.
So she seemed more just afraid to me, which is totally understandable. When you start fading from existence without any context for why it's happening, I would be afraid too in that situation, to be honest. And then obviously Claudia in close up, going like crying as she looks at a picture of her daughter, is the real kicker. But yeah, it's a hell of a
fucking love
montage.
Claudia.
Yeah,
I just love Claudia so much.
She's really good. And I've said the whole way through the series, #Trust Claudia, and I was bloody right. I knew it. I knew she'd be the one to figure it out, because she's the only one who didn't have a dog in the fight, so to speak. She was out on the outside, figuring things out, doing science, and then she came in at the end and just dropped the mic. It was like
Benoit Blanc from Knives Out.
Yeah,
let me tell you how it happened.
Yeah, exactly. That is basically what this episode is for Claudia. Yeah. It's just like, just a one more question, please, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But okay, so I'm going to be that guy. Like, I know you went through a whole emotional thing there. I went through it back in June, but I am going to be that guy, and I am going to say that I think they took some artistic liberties here, which I'm very happy they did. But let's be honest, when they started disappearing, if we were really if we're going to be real hard on the science, they wouldn't have noticed they were disappearing. The whole world would have just went, right? So the fact that they gave us the moments where they realized they were disappearing, I really love that. But it is breaking away from the actual hard rules of the show. Which had to be done, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we needed that. We needed to see it as an audience, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense in the science at all, because obviously once they start realizing they're disappearing, then that means that the cycle would no longer work, and therefore Adam and Claudia couldn't have been at the point they were meant to be.
Yeah, but maybe they were catching time as it was waking up or something. It was just like, I don't know, like it's still sleepy, it hasn't had its coffee, so it's like blinking them out of existence.
It's true, yeah. And we say there's a weird ethereal something happening.
Well, we'll come back to that in the end of this scene that we're about to talk about. I'm not having this.
I'm really no, you're not. And
I'm having it.
I'm really hoping that you're not going to say what I think you're going to say. But you know what? If you say it, you say it. But you are going to have to suffer the wrath of the comments, and that's a real sad. That's a really sad way to end this journey, Konrad.
Yeah, the After Dark podcast will not be returning for a second season. After it's revealed that Konrad is an idiot.
Yeah. Okay.
Listen,
so
all right, we'll get there. We'll get.
So
there.
we're in the final scene now. We get one last Torben's eye joke.
And we get "You Spin Me Right Round" on the radio as well, which is like that's their sign language, or like semaphore for we're in the 80s. Just like, let's play this.
They're not in the 80s though.
I think they are. Oh wait, no, they can't be in the 80s, can they? Because
look at the age of the characters.
Yeah, but they're like, do they have to be the same age?
Well, I think technically they don't, but I think they are. I think that.
I guess I hadn't really thought that through.
Okay, what's more likely? All of the characters were born 33 years earlier, or they played a song from 3 decades ago.
So no one listens to that song on the radio anymore. Well, there's no way.
That I think we're in 2019 here. That's
There's no way. No, it could be either. It's more likely to be that one, to be honest. But my initial read of it was that that we were in the 80s just because of the song they're playing on the radio, which seemed like a deliberate choice. But...
I think that song choice is just to bring us back into the mode we were in the first episode.
That's maybe it was that.
As is the credits song.
Yes, yeah, that's definitely there to bring us back to the mindset of when we first heard it.
Right. Okay. So, what did you think about the Torben eye joke first of all?
That's great, and I told you that he'd be important, listeners. I said that his eye was important, and here we see him made whole again, a
Yep.
being of unknowable power. now that he's fully whole, and he's with Hannah, which is not a pairing I would have seen, to be honest. If you'd have asked me which two characters do you think are going to get together, Torben and Hannah would be pretty far down my list of characters. Although he did express an interest in Ulrich's proclivities with Hannah to Clausen, so maybe there was a little snifter of jealousy there
I think there was a little sniff there of foreshadowing even that early, if I'm honest with you, because we know that they had all their points of where they wanted to go when they started writing season 2. So the fact that he says that, I very much think that they knew that.
Just a little nudge in that direction. But so we're in the Nielsen house for this, but it's Regina's house, based on the pictures that are on the wall. So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Benny and Peter are presumably together. They seem like they're together at this point. Katerina seems like she's single, which is probably for the best based on her relationship with Ulrich. And Hannah's pregnant, and they're reheating. I'm guessing it's Hannah's famous lasagna. But it could be anyone's, I suppose.
Well, actually, that's very stark contrast to the Prime and old Hannah, who we know doesn't even keep the fridge stocked, but she's making lasagna in this one. Yeah,
well, and she brought lasagna to Katerina when she wanted to spy on Ulrich, didn't she?
Right, actually,
in the first season. That's why I assumed it was hers.
So there you go. It is the famous Hannah lasagna. Actually.
Yeah, the famous Hannah. Yeah,
she just never gave any to Jonas.
No. I mean, it always went bad in their fridge.
Okay, so Hannah does like a big monologue here where she sort of just like is saying that she feels the weight of basically a world coming into existence and going, and sort of a very nice sort of. As if like it wasn't for nothing. There is some feel of it somewhere in the world.
I mean, my read of it is it kind of works as like an epitaph for the characters that we've lost who didn't really get those moments for us to say goodbye to them. So, I mean, we don't really know who they are, but for argument's sake, let's say your Ulrichs and your Egons and Charlottes and Ellies. Yeah. It's basically saying that not every. They are gone, and they've gone to this infinite blackness, but it's actually better than living in this perpetual struggle and pain that they were in previously. So it's not for nothing that they have gone.
I mean, tell that to the versions of the random people who live in Winden. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, I know. Like, what's Clausen up to in this one? That's what I want to know. Like, is he better off now? Like, if he is indeed alive in this version of reality?
Well, I would imagine, and this is my take on that, because we don't see Yasin in this scene, or Alexander, I should say. We don't see him. And I think that's because, for a few reasons, actually. Ulrich doesn't exist in this world, so therefore, him and Katerina probably weren't in the forest, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, Regina wouldn't have been there getting bullied, so therefore, she wouldn't have discovered Boris, right? So Boris basically, when he came and was like, I think that all happened the same way, and he came and he probably just bled out in the forest and died. That's what I think.
Could easily have happened. Yeah, because he wouldn't have Regina sewing him up.
Which means Bartos doesn't exist in this world.
Wow, there we go. It was all worth it.
Exactly. Yeah,
that was Claudia's real goal. Like, I need to get rid of my fucking annoying grandson.
Okay, Konrad, say the thing that everyone's going to be angry at you for saying.
Right. Okay, I'm going to preface this by saying I don't mean literally when I say this.
Okay, you mean soul. Okay, I'm going to fully buy into what you're saying if you're talking about the soul.
Yeah, I don't think the baby that she is going to have is literally going to grow up to be our Jonas. But I think the looking into the camera, with the deja vu of the yellow raincoat, and then I think Jonas is a beautiful name. To me, it goes back to that link between Jonas and Marta's beings or energy or whatever in like that space between times, to say these two will always find a way to it's to me it's a glimmer of hope at the end of this series, to say
it definitely is a glimmer of hope. Yes,
like these two souls or spirits or whatever you want to call it are indelibly linked to each other. They will always find each other, and the baby that Hannah has here may not look like Jonas, it may not talk like Jonas, but it will have that sort of fragment of Jonas's spirit that will mean that at some point he will find the wherever Marta has ended up in
Well,
this world.
Katarina, if Katarina has a daughter,
Yeah.
perhaps if you're thinking about the souls,
Yeah.
perhaps the daughter will be called Marta.
I think that's I mean, I know that this is the old romantic at heart in me here, that it's kind of similar to the Charlotte thing. It's what I want to happen, but I think that is what the ending is saying, with the addressing the camera, just to say there is hope in this world for these characters to exist in some form. But yeah, I don't think he's going to pop out wearing like a yellow trench coat and being like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, well, the DNA
Kiss
would not.
my arm.
I'm so glad that's where you went with it, because if you went just literally, because
It's going to be Jonas.
Yeah, some people did. Some people did. Like my mum did, for example. But
it would be a bit too easy if it was just like, oh yeah, this is just Jonas and Marta.
if that was the case, the only way I can get on board with the theory that it is literally going to be Jonas again is if you genuinely think that Hannah cheated on Michael with Torben.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past her. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but I think there's something there in terms of like the idea of that. But I don't think it's definitely not saying this is going to be the same Jonas. It's definitely not saying, like, it's not saying with a rubber stamp his soul is going to exist. It's not saying that, because
no, it's just a little
nudge. And it's important that it's just a little glimmer, because otherwise, to me, it would take away a lot of the weight of the previous montage and the previous discussion between Adam and Marta. Jonas and Marta in terms of not existing. So
you don't want to like Dragon Ball Z this and have like someone die and then like 5 minutes later it's like, well, wish them back with the Dragon Balls. It's like, you can't undermine your own emotional crescendo that way. But I think to me this is just, as Dark has done, like, I think it's quite a grim show in what it thinks about what it tries to depict about humanity and what it has to say about humanity, but it does offer these little nuggets of positivity, and I think this is one that really spoke to me. Maybe because it's literally the last thing that happens in the show, so that is the message they wanted us to leave on. But it really touched me.
Yeah, and then banging into that,
the Nina song,
the best choice of song they could have got, because it just literally, even back, to be honest with you, even though it was about to be a horrible thing with Helga T junctioned himself and killed his older killed himself and demented his younger self or whatever. Even that moment, whenever he's like driving in the car and it's got that song on, I'm like, oh my god, this feels so nostalgic. And we've talked about before, like the idea of that feeling nostalgic, and like, I don't know, she says like, Jonas is a lovely name, and then it goes into that song, and I've never went through so many emotions in the last 20-30 minutes of a show in my life.
No, I think it is. I don't think it's hard with a season finale, or especially with the end of a show, to judge it on the merits of the episode alone, because so much comes with watching the end of something. But I think if I try to step back from it, I don't think this is quite as good an episode as the previous one, but it's still easily in my top 5 episodes of the show. Like, and this ending, like particularly the final half hour, is just non-stop amazing acting, amazing characterization, but the kind of huge emotional big hits that the show manages to land are all phenomenal. And yeah, as I say, it's the first time the show's made me cry, which, I'm not saying I'm like hard to make cry, but it takes the right kind of thing to get me, and this absolutely did.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I think this might be the first time they tried to make you cry.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, because that's kind of what it takes to get me. Is something needs to be really sentimental and be like, listen, we're gonna get you. That's normally what it takes. And yeah, this, I felt like they're like, you could kind of feel them being like, we're gonna get those fuckers this time.
Yeah. My wife Ema, you know what she didn't cry at the end of Dark.
Yeah.
I mean, she absolutely loves it to the same level as I do, but she didn't cry, and it's like talking about small brain, big brain. The reason she didn't cry is such a big brain reason, right? She goes, well, I just wasn't, she said, I really got the emotion of it, but I didn't push me over the edge to crying, because like, this Marta and this Jonas aren't the ones we've been following, well, they are the ones we've been following, but this is the same Jonas
Yeah.
from the end of season 2. So that's why she was like, this isn't the one that died in episode 5. It is the same one, I know. Don't say in the comments, haha, Anthony doesn't understand. It is, but that's what my wife's like logic was, is that, you know, these characters have been split in this episode and there isn't the same weight to them for that reason. Now, for me, you know, I think she's cold-hearted bitch, basically. But
clip that, put that, preserve that for posterity.
No, I'm just obviously I'm joking, but I think she's onto something there. But at the same time, she didn't let herself be taken away with it.
It's interesting that that disconnect felt really pronounced there, because to me it was seamless, and maybe that's because I don't have a very analytical brain when it comes to stuff like that. Like I accept that kind of stuff at face value. It's like, okay, that Jonas is dead, but this is our Jonas now. I'm just going to plug you into these storylines and we'll keep on going. Whereas, as you say, if you actually take a step back and analyze that, it's like, well, a lot of what we're seeing of this Jonas hasn't, or a lot of what we've seen of our Jonas hasn't actually happened to this Jonas. So
the last third of his story isn't there.
Yeah,
exactly. But but at the same time, like, you know, as I say, like, you know, it is.
Where's your heart? Where's your heart?
Where's your heart? Like, she doesn't have one. No. Let's be honest. Right. Okay. Well, let's get into the roundup then.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so IMDb rating, which I don't have open, is
professional. We're professionals here.
Let's fill the time. 9.7, which is the highest of any episode from the whole show. I know you said maybe wasn't as good as the last one, which is harsh.
Yeah.
Harsh to put it that way, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, you know, I feel like every time I say this, I have to go back and recontextualize it and say, I'm saying it's not as good as the last one. If you remember, the last one I said was a 10 out of 10. so it's like, yeah, it's not as good as that. It's still 9.7 seems fair enough to me. Like, it's still a really fucking good episode of television.
Yeah.
It's the last half hour is amazing. And not say the first half of the episode is bad either. The first half is really, really good. I just think it's not doing quite as much as the previous episode was. Like, the previous episode had a lot of moving parts and managed to nail all of them. This one is more the emotional high points of the catharsis of finally seeing the end of the story. Which, you know, I'm not dinging it for being that. That's what a finale should be. But it is just, you know, slightly less difficult to do.
Yeah, but at the same time, it was a perfect landing to this. You know, I mean, it was just great. Right, okay. So Konrad and I thought, Konrad thought, and I okayed it. Let's be honest. Go off you go, Konrad. Give us your thoughts. We thought people would want to know what he thought of the show overall. So off you go.
I hated it. No, I didn't. I like.
That would be a real red herring there, because the rest all that time you were saying you love the show and
it was all I'm sowing these little seeds that made you think I liked it, but you were fooled, listener. No, I mean, you know, it's a great show. I think honestly, when Anthony asked me or initially recommended this to me, like, I think it was like several years ago, and I filed it away in like the big cabinet in my head where I put all the TV shows that I think sound interesting, but I know that I'm almost certainly going to fail to get around to watching because I don't watch that much television. But if it weren't for Anthony and you guys, I may have never actually got to see it, which would have been like a massive loss, to be honest, because this show is phenomenal. It's a comprehensive display of brilliant writing, plotting, presentation, acting. Like, everything about it is so good. Probably the best I've seen from any TV show in a long time. It is simply one of the best science fiction television shows ever made. Probably one of the best, full stop. But yeah, and I can't say it enough, really. I would have enjoyed watching this show if it had just been me and Anthony talking about it, and we weren't doing the podcast. But having the feedback and like the encouragement, and yes, even the insults when I get one tiny thing wrong, that's really insignificant in the grand scheme of things, and you know who I'm talking to. But all of that has made this like such a special experience, and I can't wait to go through it again with a new series in the future. So yeah, thank you to everyone for watching and listening along. It's made it really awesome experience for me, and I assume for Anthony as well.
Yep.
And I hope you join us on our next series. It's not going to be dark, but you know, this will still be after dark, so you know what you're getting from us.
Yeah, exactly. And even though we're going to try not to that much, we probably will compare the future seasons series we do to Dark. But at the same time, we still do have Dark discussions on the channel. Obviously, 1899 is coming in the future, so there's more from these creators. And Konrad is not going to watch it straight away, and we are going to do it on the After Dark podcast.
That's the sacrifice I'm making for our subscribers. Is when given how much I've loved this show, you will all know how difficult it's going to be for me to not watch 1899 as soon as it comes out. But that's the price I'm paying for my art.
Yeah, exactly. So, and also, like, if you just want to hear Konrad and I talk about Dark, it's not, as I say, it's not going away. Konrad is going to be joining me on the Dark Discussions live stream, every 2-3 weeks. We're going to try and get maybe 2 times a month. If we can't get 2 times a month, it'll be at least once a month.
Yeah.
And so we're still going to have the same banter around Dark. There's still like the sort of serious analysis with like a really like sort of humorous tone of levity, for a bit of levity there. But so it still is there. If you haven't subscribed to the Dark Discussions podcast, go and do it, because that's where you'll get us talking about Dark in the future. That's what I'll say. Except for after we do the OA, we do plan on doing 3 special episodes where we take Emmett, who's a friend of mine who contributes to the channel on Sci-Fi Saturday. He's going to go through Dark one season at a time. So he's going to binge it, and we're gonna sort of see how his predictions are at the end of season 1.
Yeah. And I'm going to laugh in his fucking face. Is what I'm gonna do. That's my plan.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit back with a massive cigar and a tumbler of whiskey, just like, you idiot!
Yeah. This fool didn't even predict the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah. Where's the sword fight Regina's going to have, you twat? I had to mark that red. I don't want to give the listeners too much of a glimpse into the Theory Matrix episode, but I had to mark that red this week, and that was a bitter pill to swallow indeed.
Yeah, okay, so that's just actually a good little... Next week, we're going to be doing the Konrad's Theory Matrix. So we sort of go through every theory that he's had on the show. It'll be a big long slog because we've got 3 seasons now.
Yeah, it's gonna be you gotta strap yourselves in for this one because it's gonna be a long one.
Yeah, so we need to go through them. I am also so if you're wondering where the Yas and his Alexander theories are in this conversation for the rest of it today, if you're wondering where the sword fight Regina had, if you're wondering where those are, they're next week's episode when we go through Konrad's theories. Right or wrong, they will be concluded next week.
It's coming down. I'll tell you this right now. I was marking them all right or wrong, but not scoring them yet after this episode, and I think it is going to come down to the wire. So we shall see. But I need all your thoughts and prayers, listeners, to get me over the line on this one.
All right, let's do a really quick what the dub.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, let's do a what the dub.
What the dub?
The what the dub this week is that if you think I'm watching the last episode of Dark in a dub, you've lost your fucking mind. I'm not watching this episode with a dub ever. I don't want this moment, the end of this show, to be marred in any way. I'm not doing it. So
you don't want to hear Eva's witch voice being ruining that scene with Adam.
No, yes, exactly. I do not want to have it ruined in any way. I'm sorry, listeners. I couldn't do it for you. I'm not watching this episode in dub. That's what the what the dub segments have been really good fun. But this is where it ends, unfortunately.
What language are you going to watch the OA in? That's the question now.
Yeah, what the dub? I didn't understand a word this week.
Yeah, I didn't. I've forgotten his name now. The Jason Isaacs. You have to dub him because he's northern.
Yeah.
I retract that. I lived in the north for 7 years. All right, no one judge me. I love the north of England.
Right. Okay. And the very north too. You live in Leeds, so
yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's have a look here. Let's go to questions then.
Okay, let's do it.
A stranger from the outside.
I realized we probably could have done a what do you call it? A Wincest based on the idea that Torben is actually the father of Eunice, but we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. The burnt revelation. That's not really incest, but it is creepy as hell.
Right. I mean it's nudging up against Wincest spiritually, I would say.
Yeah.
I feel like Burnt needs to have his feet held to the fire a little bit on that one. Be like, hey, that girl was 13 when you were in your 40s. What's going on here, Burnt?
Yep, exactly. Right. Okay. So we have first of all a question from the email, And that's ADPodmail. If you want to send us a message or an email, whatever you want to send us, that's where you do it. Yep. ADPodmail@gmail.com. From Karen. And Karen says, the name of the last episode is The Paradise. What do you think that could mean?
Actually, we didn't say this in the main episode, did we? The hold on, I need to scroll back up to it in German.
Oh yes,
Das Paradies. Yeah,
we all know that. Come on.
Well, I think it's a play on words of what Adam has been striving for, what Sigmundus, in fact, have been striving for this entire series. I think that they've talked about wanting to achieve this paradise at the end of the rainbow, so to speak, and it's all been up until this episode a lie. Adam just wanted to end everything because with nothing there is no pain. He doesn't. He can effectively reduce everything to a zero-sum game by breaking the knot, and I think it's intended. To me, it's intended a little bit ironically, or maybe not ironically, maybe that's not the right word, but like sarcastically almost, because I feel like the presentation of the friends at the dinner table at the end of the episode, there are some tensions in that group, but when Hannah has a big monologue about having a dream about the world ending, and Benny says, "Oh, you should really get that looked at," to break like the awkward silence, and Hannah kind of side eyes him a bit. It's like, oh, maybe it's just the hormones. So, and I feel like that's really important because it's presenting this group relationship as it's not perfect. It's not. These people are still basically the people they were in the Alton Prime world. They're still capable of all the good and bad things that they did in that world. So it's calling it a paradise is obviously a bit of it's deliberately overblown, but it's also saying this is far better than what we had. Like we have to value this world because it doesn't take much to completely screw it up. And I think that's to me that's what the title is saying.
Okay, yeah, I think I probably would agree with you. Okay, so assuming that the 6 characters survive the show, assuming that only 6 characters would survive the show, please name 6 characters you think will survive, and why do you think these? So basically, 6 characters that you are in the origin world. Okay,
so they can't be ones that we've seen.
Yeah, don't use the ones in the last scene or burnt.
Well, I'm assuming Egon is, because I can't deal with a world without Egon.
Well, Claudia exists, so Egon has to too.
Yeah. I'm gonna say Daniel Kahnwald is a real piece of shit. So like he'll figure out a way to survive. The Albers probably do as well. Because,
they have to because Katarina's
yeah. Well, I'm not approaching this as like I'm trying not to logic this to get the logical answers. I've got the 4 who I think logically have to be there. The last 2 I'm just gonna shoot from the hip and say characters I want to be alive, and that's Noah. I know he probably isn't, but I'm saying Noah's there because Mark Vashke's cool as hell, and I want him to be in this world. Listen, God works in mysterious ways, all right?
For Noah to be alive, right? That means that Egon had to have a baby with Hannah whenever he was like 70 and she was 20.
Checks out. Ask Burnt.
Yeah. He's getting the tips from Burnt.
Yeah. Daniel Kahnwald and Burnt are both like pickup artists in the real world. They're like, look, doesn't matter how old you are, just flash some cash. Disgusting, man.
But what do you call it? But also Bartos would have to exist, so therefore Regina would have had to save Alexander. But but it is technically possible. It is possible for Noah to exist. It is possible.
I mean, let's not rule anything out. And then last one, I'm going to say, who's a character I really liked? I'm going to say Ellie. Doesn't make sense, but
yeah. The soul of Ali exists in a random fox in the forest.
yeah, she's like one of those Japanese spirits. Like she's gone into a fox in the forest.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool.
Who would you pick? Would you pick anyone that I haven't mentioned?
Is this a first? Konrad's asking me my opinion.
Listen, it's the end of the season. I'm in a charitable mood.
Right. Okay. No, you've definitely done it before. I'm just joking. So who would I pick? Well, I know who's alive, like because I've analyzed the family tree to the minute detail.
Yeah, but you have to go the other way though. Like you're into the analysis of the minute detail to figure out logically who could be alive. What I want you to do is take a step outside your comfort zone and just go on feeling. Just go on heart.
Let's go on feeling. Right. Okay. Yeah. Who do I want to be alive?
Yeah, more than anyone else.
More than anyone else.
Don't say Bartos.
Oh no, it's not Bartos. Right, okay, let's say I don't know. I can't actually think of a character who I don't know doesn't exist.
Not like Jonas. I mean, like the Jonas kind of will exist as we've discussed, but
yeah, you're definitely. Oh, Magnus. Let's go, Magnus.
Oh yeah, sure. Magnus seemed like a good guy.
Yeah, Magnus is not going to exist, but I'd like him to.
Yeah.
Obviously, Franziska is really unlucky. Because she doesn't get to exist because it just so happens that her sister is the mother of her mother. That had nothing to do with Franziska.
No, Franziska got dealt the short straw in that one because it was like, what are you doing? Can you not just stay out of this time travel stuff and let me exist, please?
Yeah, exactly. Right, okay. Next question comes from Sam. Now, I will say that we got a lot of comments and questions. It's like I think close to 60. Which is a fantastic. Thank you very much, guys.
Oh, wow.
Just to remind you, tomorrow, 9 p.m. UK time on Dark Discussions Live, we're going to be going through a lot of these. I don't have time for them all now, but we were going to be going through a lot of them, okay? All right, so Sam Svensson says, does Claudia always discover that time pauses for a second during the apocalypse? Or is it just that once when she discovers the existence of the third world? We have covered this a little bit.
So you got me thinking, actually, with your point that it's only actually happened once.
Yeah.
I think that's right. I think that makes sense that she discovered time splits and like that she's able to split time in the same way that
so the infinity of the loop still exists, but it's just where she split off happens once.
Yeah. So I don't know how much she would have discovered about that in previous like instances of that loop, and then like
she discovers it every time because she has to in order to split herself.
But you don't think the one that splits off successfully fixes the loop every time, or that only needs to happen once?
Okay, so this idea of every time it goes around it could change is not true. I'm just going to say it to you, Konrad. It's not true. It's what I thought when I first watched the show too, but it's not true. The past has happened. The future has happened. You cannot change anything. Every time Jonas goes to the 80s, it doesn't split off and create a new 80s because he does something slightly different. It all happens the same. The differences, the small differences, is when they reference that within the different worlds. So in the alt world, things happen slightly differently than the prime world. It's not it. There's not a new Jonas every cycle. It's only one. It only happens once. The time. Now I explained this on my Dark Discussions last week, actually, in a very crude paint drawing, right? But the actual calendar of time. Is a straight linear line. It's the characters that are going back and forward, right?
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
So the whenever Jonas goes back, turns into the stranger, or that sort of thing, it's only ever happens once. When at the end of episode 7, whenever he becomes a stranger, he's not a new stranger. He's the same character we saw in season 1. He's the exact. It's happening. It only ever happened once. Except you can view it as happening infinity times as well, because we don't know where the beginning is. It's a circle, okay?
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
And I've explained it in a video before. A circle has infinity sides and one side.
Yeah,
okay.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, it is. It took me a long time.
I'm gonna basically go and watch all of your videos on this now because I'm allowed to.
Yeah, well, don't take what I say as gospel here. Like, definitely not. Like, I'm willing. Like, I'm not saying that I'm correct. I'm not saying that. But I think that there is enough in it for people. Well, like the whole changing every cycle thing, I don't think that's...
But no, but I mean, it's good that you do this analysis because, as I say, whenever it comes to like really complicated like time travel stuff, for me, it's like, does it pass the squint test? Like, if I look at it like that and it seems like it makes sense, it's like, yeah, that's fine. I'm not going to analyze you too much. I'm going to move on to the character stuff. But then it like as is evident on this podcast, when we get into the nitty gritty of it, I'm like, okay, like, you have to be like led by the nose to these theories. So it's good to have yourself.
So to answer Sam Svensson's answer there is is it because time only happens once and they're all jumping it back and forward, right?
Yeah.
So like it means that the characters are living longer in that small amount of time than they should, but the time that passes is still the case. So there is only ever one 1986. There's only ever one 2052. There's only ever one of these, except for in the actual reality splits, but that's slightly different.
That makes sense.
So whenever they get to the end and Claudia splits herself away, all right, she only did it once, and that part isn't part of the loop. So therefore, it hasn't happened infinity times. You know, if you know what I mean. Like, so the infinity doesn't come into the idea that it changes every time. The infinity is just, well, there's no beginning of this, so we don't know. That's really hard to get your head around, but it is true. Trust me. I've been told in the comments I'm wrong enough.
Well, I'm trying to comprehend this while my foot is being attacked by a cat. So that's making this equally, like that's making it, I'm gonna say 50% harder for me to comprehend.
Yeah, at least 50. You know, okay, so although as I said, like, well, as we know from a commenter last week, I am small brain. So
you are small brain. We are both small brain. Unfortunately, you are also in the small brain club with me.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think.
Come on in, the water's fine. We don't worry about things like plot holes here. We're just like, I don't know, I want to see Noah be cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If we get Noah being cool, that's all we really need this show.
Yeah.
That drone, that score is amazing. Right. Okay. Yes. Just talking about talking about small brain. Handsome head injury has a question. So for Konrad, what was the most surprising aspect of the finale for you?
I think that it was relatively happy, to be honest. I think that caught me by surprise. I could have seen it having a very grim ending, you know,
cynical ending.
Yeah, like a cynical ending. Like we cut to the origin world and it's just Tannhaus waking up in bed, seeing his family. Not to say that that's not an unhappy ending for him, but for where we are, that'd be quite grim, because the assumption would be, well, we don't know which of the characters that we know and love have made it, but maybe none of them. So I particularly actually, which is maybe one of the reasons why it struck me so much, the Hannah speaking directly into the camera saying, I think Jonas is a beautiful name. That little glimmer of hope is very optimistic in a show that doesn't really trade in optimism that much. So that really caught me by surprise. Yeah,
exactly. I agree with that. Where you fall down on the idea of his soul and stuff, it doesn't really matter. You can't really argue that was an optimistic final word of the show.
Yeah. Even if it's misplaced optimism, it's still optimism.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay. Next question from Handsome Henry says, for Anthony, that's me, which of Konrad's correct finale predictions most surprised you? Jesus, like, to be honest with you guys, everyone talks about my poker face. I mean, and I've had a bit of flack before. I've had a bit of flack about giving Konrad a bit too much here and there. I think that's all unfounded, to be honest with you. But last,
I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to complain.
But last episode, or episode 31, I should say, when Konrad basically just said what's going to happen in the finale, and I was just, and I properly had to just be poker face city there, because it just kept going, like, and I was just like, it just kept going, and I was just like, right, okay, so there's 3 worlds, gotcha. I think Claudia's figured this out. Okay, gotcha. It's called the Origin World.
That was a bit that I was like, when I heard that in this episode, I was like, I should give myself 1,000,000 points for getting that right, because me and Jan Fries, we're 2 peas in a pod. We're linked.
No, that's why whenever I think I said this in Dark Discussions as well last week, but I was like, when you said Origin World, in my own head, I was like, I've got to rationalize how he knows this somehow. Because this looks like he's cheating. So I literally, one of the next things I say is, and you got Origin because they mentioned the Origin so much in the show, don't they? Because I was just like getting you to say, yeah, like they mentioned the Origin. That's where I got that from. Because I was like, people are going to think he's cheating. Like, that's how dead on you were, you know?
I mean, to be honest, if I was going to cheat, I would have cheated a lot longer ago than like 1 episode to the end. As I say, the Theory Matrix is going to come down to the wire, I think. So I'm like, if I've cheated, I've not done myself any favors by leaving it until now.
Yeah, exactly. But no, but nevertheless, it was absolutely ridiculous. I think that the fact that he got the name of it, Origin World, is what surprised me the most of that.
Yeah,
of that prediction.
I was pretty impressed with myself, to be honest, for getting Origin World right. But I mean, it does make sense when you think about it. You know, it is the like, because they've talked so much about, oh, you know, the like Gary, the cleanup crew is the Origin, and then when you find out that that's clearly not the case, it then asks the question, well, what is the Origin? And it turns out the Origin is in a different world, and ergo the Origin World.
Yep, exactly. And that's the thing. And to this day, people will argue with me, not argue, but discuss with me in comments their understanding of the show. And what I find time and time again is people accidentally take what Eva and Adam say for as wrote, and they say, yeah, but the cycle is this, and the cycle is like, no, that's what Adam said it was.
Yeah,
we know that he was wrong.
Yeah. They're either wrong or deliberately lying. Like it's never trust anything those two say.
Exactly. Okay.
Which I think actually. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that actually coming to that conclusion is so important in understanding the kind of broad story strokes of Dark, because there's definitely a point, I think maybe in the middle of season 2, where it's like, what the fuck is going on? Because everything that Adam, because I don't know what Adam wants, and like everything that he says the opposite seems to happen, but then once you come to this conclusion, they're like, oh, not like everything he does is predetermined as well. You know, he's flying as blind as the rest of us, and he's just trying to perpetuate his own life so that he can fix things in his own mind. It makes everything far easier to understand, because it's basically like, just don't trust him.
Exactly. And like, not to go back to the whole cycle thing again, but I will just say very quickly, like the idea, like if you want someone that does believe that things can be changed, that idea has been put in your head by Adam. Okay.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that is a misanalysis, I believe, of the show as a whole, because you're believing what Adam says. The show has showed us time and time again, no matter what character thinks they can change things, they fucking fail. They fail. Claudia had to split herself away from the cycle to do it. And even then, there's an argument that she still went back and did all the things like say goodbye to her father, get shot by Noah, because she was still making sure that the cycle did complete. I mean,
the argument for predeterminism, I've said it before, I'll say it again, and it makes even more sense. I wasn't certain about it previously because I didn't know how the show was going to end, but it all comes back to Ulrich's choice in the caves when he's chasing Helga. He has the choice of going left or the choice of going right, and he has no information about either one. If everything wasn't predetermined, at least some of the time he wouldn't end up in the 50s. And he he ends up in the 80s first, I think. But either way, like he wouldn't make the choice he does, and
50s,
everything.
50s, you're right. 50s.
Yeah, it is the 50s, yeah, isn't it? Yeah. He wouldn't end up in the 50s, and everything would be ballsed up as a result. He has to pick the 50s every single time with a coin toss. So it doesn't make sense for it to be anything other than.
And if that can't change, nothing can change. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we'll do one more question, and then we'll try and get as much into the live stream tomorrow as we can. Okay, guys?
Okay.
All right, so question here from Pharaoh. Now, I haven't seen Pharaoh in the comments before. Maybe I have, but I don't. So I'm going to give him a chance here on the last episode, Pharaoh. Don't let us down.
No pressure.
Here's a question for both of you. Is there a character in Dark that you wish the show would have focused on more? Great question. Or had a bigger role in the loop? For me, Charlotte was my favorite character, a favorite character of mine, and I was saddened by her lack of scenes in season 3. I get you, Pharaoh, but I would also argue that Charlotte
got a lot.
She got a lot early on, and season 2 was her season. She got
a lot in season 2.
It's like season 2 was Clausen and Alexander's season. Like by finding out who her parents were, there's nowhere else she can really go with her arc. You know what I mean? So yeah. I agree with you that it would have been nice to see more of her just because we love Charlotte, but I think it makes sense what they did. Also, they hope that Alt Mikkel had a bigger role. Anyway, so Konrad, who's a character you would have liked to see more focus on?
Torben.
Okay.
More Torben. No, I think probably Ellie. Seriously, I would have liked to have seen what Ellie was up to.
Her and Celia, maybe when Celia first got there.
And Celia, because she must have had an interesting, maybe interesting is a bit of a euphemism, but an eventful existence after a child was stolen. So I would have liked to have seen a bit more of her because she's a great character.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good answer. For me, it's Agnes.
Agnes is a good shout as well.
Yeah, so I've got a whole theory, Conrad. Should I put it out for you now?
Give me the theory.
I've talked about it a fair bit last week on Dark Discussions. Jeez, guys, if you haven't seen it, go. I've talked about my last week episode of Dark Discussions a lot. Go watch it. But basically, now strap yourself in here, Conrad. This is maybe a bit harebrained, but I think there is enough. I think
another French delegation nightmare we're heading into.
Maybe. So, Agnes is the character a few episodes ago when I said to you, it's strange that we don't see another character, this character again.
Yeah, I thought it might be. I thought she might be.
That's Agnes, right? So, when Adam was listing where they're going, right? Magnus and Francisca are going, they've got a job, they're paired together, they've got the same job. Then he says, Elizabeth and Charlotte, they've got the same job, okay? Then he says, Celia and Agnes, right? Where did they go? Now, obviously, they're all family members too, but still, it still connects them with a job as well. So Celia went to have Noah and Agnes, right? Went to have children, basically. Yeah. I believe, and this is my theory, I believe that Agnes went through the portal, and remember how she was crying and they were all so emotional? She was hugging Celia. She didn't want to go where she was going. I think she went through to either rendezvous or maybe he didn't know she was coming, but to meet the unknown, to have Tronta. I think that's where she has Tronta, and it's out of obligation. There's no other explanation to me about how she ends up with the unknown, right?
That would make sense.
So I think when in the first season when she comes to Vinden, we know that Tronta was in a what do you call it? An orphanage. We know that he was in an orphanage. I think that Agnes, the reason why she was able to leave her son, she hadn't had him yet.
Yeah.
I think that Agnes hasn't had him yet, and I think that potentially she just doesn't survive. And I think, and there's also in the start of episode 4.
When she comes and picks him up again, or her younger self comes and picks him up again. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think
Gary is not. I would not put it past. Well, in fact, she literally says that he's abusive. I think, doesn't she?
Yep.
So I wouldn't put it past him to kill her at some point.
And he does say as well in the origin, whenever Agnes is in our minds very much still alive, the origin. Gary says to Tronta when he's talking to him outside the cave. He says, "I knew your mother." He says it in past tense. So I think I don't
think that's that harebrained. I think there's definitely credibility to that. I had the exact same thought in my mind. You did say this character, or you said a character doesn't show up again, and then when Agnes didn't show up, I think was it episode 6 or episode 5 where Agnes goes off.
One of those, yeah. Episode 5,
And when she didn't show up in the last episode or the previous episode before this one, I was a bit like, where's Agnes? And and then obviously she's not in this one. So I don't think that's outside the realm of plausibility that's where she's going off to, is to have this abusive relationship.
Yeah, I've also said that there is potential for a spin-off show or a one-off movie of that storyline, because even the whole idea of how there's one Gary but 2 Trontas is also mind-blowing, and there's also people who are suggesting that perhaps our Prime Agnes is the only mother of Tronta, and then Tronta is maybe split. You know what I mean? Which would be interesting, but
that'd be nuts. If I was literally just thinking that, did they split Tronta as well? But
yeah.
That's all kinds of messed up if you then start thinking about that.
There's a whole series of Dark Discussions podcasts on that. But right, guys, that's us for this week. I think we've given you an extra long one today. So we are going to be back tomorrow night for Dark Discussions, and we are going to be back next Monday for our Konrad Theory Matrix episode. Yeah. I waited till the very end to say this, but did anyone notice that we actually made it so that this episode was number 33?
It's predetermined.
Someone did actually point out on last week's podcast saying, the way it's going, I think the last episode is going to be 33. Isn't that a great coincidence? And then I just commented saying, it's almost as if it was planned. So everyone who hated the fact that we reviewed Edge of Tomorrow, everyone hated the fact that that we took a little sidetrack into Jon Snow for a week. You know what? We finally found our place on the best movie podcast ever. Having said that, they needed to happen. It's all predetermined, guys. They needed to happen for 33 to come true.
what we know is a drop. What we don't know is an ocean.
Yeah. And in fact, I'm so tempted to put an extra episode talking about Dark in somewhere, just so we can call it episode 35. And then if you take out Edge of Tomorrow and if you take out the Jon Snow episode, we still have 33 total of Dark,
Yeah.
But that's stupid, because by the time we do it with Emmett, it'll change anyway. But
every 33 episodes, we'll do a Dark episode.
Yeah.
That's what we have to commit to now. Don't hold us to that. The maths of that is going to become a nightmare when we start watching other series.
Exactly. Right. Okay, guys, that's us. Thanks very much for watching and going on this journey with us. If you're still watching at this stage of the video, at this stage of the series, we are eternally grateful. Please come on with us on the next journey. We are going to be touching on Dark, as we say, but I think we've got a lot of people who are looking forward to it. You have to be an Anthony or a Konrad. If you're an Anthony, you've seen the show, go and watch the OA. If you haven't, you're going to be a Konrad, and you're going to predict the way. Right, guys, well, we'll see you next week for the Theory Matrix. We'll see you tomorrow for the Dark discussions. And apart from that, any last words, Konrad?
See you in the OA, I guess.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the After Dark podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode.